It does. It goes to your point, though. I mean, it was pretty obvious that they just didn't prove their case against Zimmerman.
Yeah.
And people just can't believe it. They're just in shock and they're outraged and they want justice for Trayvon. The fact is, they didn't prove their case. They didn't have a case.
It wasn't even that they didn't prove their case. They did a good job. They were good prosecutors.
Right.
There was just no case. There's a difference between not proving a case and there not being a case. There just wasn't a case.
And these people, I don't know. I don't know. They're just.
Yeah.
They're just amazed that it went down this way.
The division on Twitter and in public on the streets and stuff last night and whatnot, just an amazing division. And that divisiveness is put there a lot by these leaders, pseudo-leaders. The media, like I said, is completely fucking culpable in this for being dishonest, for putting news out there that is based on what they need to get viewers and keep viewers and nothing to do with the actual facts.
I chose not to celebrate the verdict. A lot of people wanted to celebrate the verdict.
I celebrated in a way, not like woohoo, gloating celebrating, but I celebrated it as you look at the case, you look at what the facts were, and I'm glad that it worked. The system worked. The politics and emotion were taken out of it, and facts were put in. And I'm glad it worked out the way it did. I'm not glad that the kid's dead. No, I'm not a fucking animal. But I'm glad the system worked out.
Yeah, I just feel like an overall sadness.
It's a bad thing. It's just a
the
bad
whole thing
situation.
is just kind of sad.
You got to be crazy to deny that it's not a terrible thing that happened.
Thank you, Jackie.
Look how she puts it right perfect. Just what I would want.
It's just amazing.
Jackie
it's just amazing every time, Sam.
She's amazing.
It's
like
not
that.
amazing.
Oh, and then she just
It's just amazing.
before she leaves.
Other
With a little
interns,
hat.
they put the coffee away over there. Or look.
You're in the middle of something.
Cheers.
She's a doll.
She does nothing terribly
cheers.
impressive.
What?
Nothing.
Perfect
You're
placement.
out of your mind.
Right within
Sam.
arm's reach.
Look.
Oh,
Look at this.
Couldn't
sounds
be a
like-
more average
Oh,
intern.
Sam, sounds like the old green-eyed monster's out.
I don't even get coffee.
What?
But to have so many people in America shocked. If you're
That got me.
I followed the case more than people realize.
Yeah.
I mean, it was your thing, but I absolutely followed it, and it was very obvious that they weren't going to get him on anything. I mean, I think they blew it by not going for lesser charges. I think you had some cocky people down there in Florida.
They went for the lesser manslaughter charge.
No, I understand that, but they should have threw something else on the table. They would have got that.
I don't think they would have.
They would have got something.
I don't think they
What
would
would have been the next charge they could have got?
Involuntary manslaughter.
Involuntary.
But it wasn't involuntary manslaughter. It's
But manslaughter and second-degree manslaughter, I'm like, there's no fucking way they're going to get this.
everything they could have come up with was protected under the justification law. He was justified in doing what he did, so it throws out whatever crime there was. That's why, and I'm not, I told you so. I just knew from the start, like right when I started getting the info on this trial, it's like, as long as you don't get that weird jury thing, as long as the jury looks at the facts like they were supposed to and rendered a decision on that and not emotion and sympathy and everything else they're told not to render a decision on, it couldn't have gone another way.
Women get things done, man.
They really do.
6 women on the jury. They get things done.
6 women.
They really do, man.
And you got to realize they're in this little fucking microcosm of a world when they're sequestered like that. And their whole life is that trial at that moment. And they know it's very important for them to get it right. And when they're charged by the judge, the instructions, and they're told, don't base this on emotion. I know you've seen a lot of things that are very sad, and you can't base this on sympathy. You can't draw conclusions that are out of the realm of the fact. All that stuff, they're told that. They don't then just go back there and forget it.
Right.
And it's become such an important thing. And women, especially their wives and mothers and stuff, they're very, very calculated. They're very good with systematic things and figuring things out. And that's what the task they were put to.
Imagine what's going on through their minds today.
I would think they could now look at other facts that they weren't allowed to look at during the trial,
right,
and feel that they did render the right decision. I don't think it's one of those trials where the jury then looks at other things that weren't admitted because of some reason or another, and then goes, "Oh my God, what did we do? This is terrible. If we were told this, we would have said that." But I think they'll be happy with their decision. You know,
I think that they did the right thing legally.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to see him walk completely. I didn't want to see him go for 25 years. But I wanted to see him go for something.
Well, then that
I think he was a part of it.
But that wasn't on the table.
No, I know.
Yeah,
that was anything.
That was the problem.
It's almost the exact opposite of the way
They
I
should
felt.
at least gave him a parking ticket or something. Jesus.
Like with OJ, I thought that they legally did the right thing.
Right.
But morally, he should have went to jail. So I think that the prosecutor just fucking had a terrible job in the OJ case. What's this case? I think they legally did the right thing, but morally, well, maybe I said it the opposite. Whatever. I know what I'm trying to say is I just think that they did the wrong thing morally.
And once again, Kim Kardashian tweeted she was just so shocked. And it's
Jesus,
you idiots! You shut your mouth. Do you know who your father is? Stop being shocked.
Right? The biggest shocker ever.
The biggest shocker ever your father was involved with.
Yeah.
And she's tweeting how she's just in shock over the verdict.
I don't
What was the
believe
exact
it.
tweet? Oh, my God.
It was amazing. A lot of people coming out on Twitter yapping about it.
I was flipping around the news channels, and wow, there is such, well, I'm not going to say anything then people don't know already. There's such a divide out there in America. And you go on MSNBC, they just said fuck it. And it was a
Trayvon tribute show.
It was completely a bunch of black people.
Right.
I didn't see one white person all weekend.
No.
And then you go over to Fox, it was the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And then CNN was sort of wishy-washy in the middle, sort of.
But
still pushing toward like more black hosts than not.
They had MSNBC had the doom 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 piano music,
right?
You know, and when they'd go into commercial break, they'd slowly put the camera over on a big picture of Trayvon with like a quote from a black civil rights leader under it. I'm watching, going, what the fuck is this? It's a tribute show.
And then Fox had zippity-doo-dah, zippity-hey.
Fox was covering other stories. They didn't care.
Did they really cover a lot of other stories?
Yeah, they went to other things. It was, you know.
Yeah.
I again, don't think Fox was as the other way as MSNBC was the other way. But.
Well, you drink with those people, so, you know, we got to take what you say with a grain of salt on that one, sir.
I'm an observer.
I saw the pictures. Now you're drinking with the... Well, you've been drinking with them for a while.
It was, Greg Gutfeld and Ann Coulter and...
Judge Alex.
Judge Alex.
Can he put him back?
We all went out. He's a responsible drinker.
He is.
He wasn't...
Pounding,
but it was a nice night out.
I imagine
a lot of fun at the table.
And Coulter can throw some back with the boys.
And she could put a couple down.
She could put a couple down.
I like it.
Did she lose a scarf or something?
Yeah, she lost the scarf.
And who's got the scarf?
I have Ann Coulter's scarf.
It's glad that you have such a close relationship. She just contacts you on Twitter.
I know.
Email her.
You still don't have fucking each other's numbers?
We traded some emails. I think she wanted to get to me like really quickly. To see if I had it, and I was still there, so I could grab it.
Yeah, you never want to call somebody in that situation.
No, you don't want to call anybody.
In a public forum.
Right. Hey, where's my scarf?
Right. Did you rub it around your dick?
No, I didn't rub it around my dick.
What's wrong with you? You're not a fucking man.
That's right.
You got a lady's scarf. You rub that shit around your dick.
Is that what you do?
Yep.
I didn't
Especially
even know
if it's
that.
a soft scarf.
Oh, man.
What was the material? It depends.
Silk.
Yeah, you rub that around your dick.
A silk scarf.
Sam, you would, right?
Yeah, you got to put it on your dick. It's Hermes.
You have to. You really do.
It's like sex by proxy kind of a thing.
Well, you don't dribble on it. You know what I mean? But you definitely rub it. You rub it a little bit,
Yeah.
little bit.
And there was a doctor there from Sloan Kettering Cancer. I think he was some big cancer doctor.
Jesus, what a buzzkill.
And then a soap star guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But and like we were talking to the soap guy. It's like, how do you learn that many lines? And God, it's amazing how you guys can learn so many lines. And then I'm looking on, yeah, we're amazed by this guy. This guy cures cancer.
Right.
And we're fawning over that. The
soap opera
The soap guy can memorize some wacky words.
And then you cause it.
It was a very fun night, though, yeah.
I got jury duty next Monday. I hope I don't get a fucking...
Oh, man.
I hope I don't get a Zimmerman case. Jesus.
Yeah, that jury...
I finally have to go to jury duty.
You finally got to do it?
Our favors ran out.
That's it?
Yep. I thought, man, that was a quick 5 years.
Yeah, I got to go. Shit.
Just quote some of the tweets that came in last night. They'll kick you right off that jury.
No kidding.
Why?
The fucking people are just horrible.
Then why would they kick off the jury?
Racist tweets. You know, if you just quote some of those things.
Jury duty. Ugh. God.
You won't get...
Who does that anymore?
You'll get some stupid fucking case. No one gives a shit.
Oh, God. Now I'm in a bad mood.
I thought... did you just get out of it?
It seems like it.
Must have been, what, 2 years?
No.
3 years? 5 years?
I think it might have been 5 years. I remember someone saying you're good for 5 years. I'm
You're like,
I kind of knew people at the time, but now like they're shutting down those favors.
damn.
Because everyone's taking a look. You see this fucking pitch?
Oh, is that Carly
Ray
Jepsen?
Cyrus Jefferson or something like that. Carly Ray Bieber Jefferson.
Sam broke that artist.
Yeah,
As a matter of
what
fact.
happened?
You did?
She was
She-
not
then she
appreciative.
just fucking...
She's
said-
35 years old, Sam.
I know.
Making believe she's 17 or 18.
She really is making believe she's a kid.
They had a Deadspin's got the pitch. I'm sure we'll put it on our Facebook page. But they had a montage of the worst
That's so funny.
first pitches over the years.
Baba Booey make it?
No.
Because he's got a horrible pitch.
The best one ever was the Cincinnati. I think it was the mayor of Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see this?
That was a good one.
Did you see the montage?
No, I haven't seen the montage. I remember the mayor, though.
With stupid Obama, because everyone thinks Obama's an athlete. I've been yelling this for years. He's a nerd that isn't an athlete.
And
He
yet...
brags about his basketball skills, and he sucks.
Yeah.
He's horrendous. And he can't throw a baseball. Do you remember his pitch?
Yeah, it was
It was
terrible.
high and way outside to the left. And did you see the Carl Lewis pitch? This montage is going around. I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what news channel showed it. Carl Lewis threw it 2 feet.
Really?
Have you ever seen the Carl Lewis first pitch?
No. No.
A dinosaur throwing out the first pitch. Yeah. Chip likes this one.
Fuck yeah.
Oh. That thing's creepy looking.
That's pretty fucking cool.
Twitter co-founder.
Oh my God!
That wasn't that.
Here's Carl Lewis. Watch this. We should put this on our Facebook
He's trying to
page.
get the roof raised.
Watch this.
Oh my God. Stinks.
And then he looks at his hand like, yeah, it must have been something.
Right. George Steinbrenner and his wife. Oh, God.
Why do
She's
people keep
old.
the ball in their hands too long? That was a great pitch.
Some guy in San Diego.
It's just terrible pitch. Oh,
my
People
God.
hold it too long and throw it right by their feet.
How hard is this?
How hard is it, really?
Baba Booey makes this fucking
It's
montage.
terrible.
Oh, God.
Some cameraman caught it. Oh, the ump caught it.
How can you be that bad at throwing a baseball?
Cincinnati
Watch
mayor.
this fucking thing.
Oh my God.
He threw it literally left. It just went left.
It had to be 30 feet to the left.
What Mark Schott said about him was really inappropriate.
Oh.
Who's the number one worst? Oh, Mariah Carey.
Mariah Carey. All right.
Oh, God. She's all gussied up.
That wasn't the worst, though.
Well,
I think Chris Rock has a really bad one somewhere, but
I
it's
think-
impossible to find.
Really? He paid off some people?
I think so.
There's riots in L.A. right now?
no.
The Corey wants to talk about it in Vegas. Corey.
Yes.
Yo, what's up, boys?
Hey, buddy.
I just got in not too long ago, and there was rioting out here, or so-called rioting, the dozens and dozens of uninformed black people. And just to make a little case, I am behind Anthony 100%. When it came to this, he turned me as a black guy And yeah, they was out there throwing trash cans, stopping traffic.
It's not rioting. There's a little, shenanigans going on, but no rioting. You look at L.A. back in '92. That's some rioting.
Well, they ran on the freeway. The police had to stop them.
Yeah.
They ran on the freeway, which was pretty funny. Today, I tried to get video of that, and then they tried to move up to Hollywood, and LAPD was having none of that. And I tried to take a couple pictures of it, but they was having none of that. They was trying to push them all back to Leimert Park, and then they kind of put them up in threes, and it was like, you three go. And they were just stopping everybody. Press couldn't take pictures. They was like, nah, we're not having none of that. It was funny because they're trying to stand for something, but all the older people lost havoc, and then it just left the younger, like 19-year-old people. And for a minute, they started chanting, no justice, no peace. They started chanting no peace, no justice for a while. And I'm just sitting there looking like, oh, these idiots. Like, they're just so uninformed.
I think the police departments around some of the largest cities have gotten so good at crowd control, more so than they used to, and I think their deployment is a lot quicker these days. That I don't see the giant riots really easily being able to happen like they used to. They're able to divvy up a crowd, break up that crowd. If you have a big gathering and you let them just go as a wild mob down the street, that's what really gets out of hand. They're able to chop that crowd up into sections, and then each little squad takes a section,
right.
And they can't build that momentum up anymore. Police have gotten very good at that.
It was pretty impressive in Times Square last night.
Yeah, there were a lot of people, but
there were thousands of people in Times Square.
Times Square, it was peaceful. They had some arrests and shit.
Right.
You're always going to get that with a big crowd, but it wasn't any mass running around, busting windows, stealing shit or anything.
Sure.
I think the protests are more...
I think they arrested 17 people in Hollywood today.
It's nothing.
They tried to do something, and they had about 40, maybe 50 cops there. They just shut it down real fast.
They shut it right down.
All right. Well, a bunch of people from L.A. Tweeting right now saying not much of a riot going on.
Nah, there's nothing going on.
All right, Corey. Thank you, brother.
Yes, Corey.
All right.
I think that one of the problems, that they keep comparing him to like Emmett Till, is that they feel like, oh, here's a black guy that was shot and no one's going to jail for it.
Right.
Like that's what the whole thing is like.
Yeah.
Because like they say, well, the black guys shooting each other, but those guys were arrested. Like the guys that shoot each other in Chicago or whatever, or at least seen as criminals and arrested. And this is just a case of, like, when you look at, like, Sean Bell? And Amadou Diallo. And, I understand this got to be very frustrating to see these guys fucking getting shot unarmed, and then no one goes to jail for it.
Yeah, it's all about intent, too, and I don't know.
You don't hear many cases. I'm sure it happens in reverse, with black authority figures shooting white people and not suffering any legal penalty. Like, we get annoyed, and I know I do, and I know you do, is the way the press covers it. Like, that's enraging.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't have too much of an anger over the way the legal system handles most of these. Like the fucking 4 Marines that raped that woman and killed her husband and her.
Oh, yeah.
The legal system handled them. Or all these other situations. I don't have too much of an issue with the legal system. It's just the press.
Yeah,
whereas with blacks, it seems to be just the opposite. They don't give a fuck how the press covers it. Their problems are with the way the legal system's handling it.
Yeah, but the big cry was no justice, no peace, justice for Trayvon. What is more just in this country than a fair trial with an impartial jury? Now they'll say, "Oh, impartial jury, really?" Yes, you got 6 women in there, regardless of their color. I mean, I think if you would have, and this is my opinion, I think if you would have had 6 black women on that jury, they would have let emotion rule the day more than fact, which would have been a miscarriage of justice. I think the white women were more apt to not get so emotionally connected to this case where they were able to let the facts speak for themselves and come up with the acquittal. I think if they had a full 6 black women on the jury, there would have been too much emotion, and that would have been a miscarriage of justice.
I think you're probably right, but I don't hate George Zimmerman. I'm not thrilled that he walked completely.
Didn't they have a black woman on the jury?
No, she was Spanish, I think.
Well,
Yeah,
they hinted that
she
she was black.
I think she was black Hispanic.
Black Hispanic.
As opposed to white Hispanic.
Oh, right. Okay.
Tall Hispanic.
Tall Hispanic.
Short Hispanic.
We got George's brother coming in today?
Yep.
Yes.
What time?
We don't know.
Robert.
He's running late. I know he was supposed to be here, but he's running late.
Okay.
Robert's coming in. He was great, man. He was doing all the news channels.
He loves being on TV, man. He's doing a lot.
He's good at it, man. He can talk, and he keeps control.
Yeah.
He just, speaks his piece, and they try to rile him up on CNN. Man, they were just getting ridiculous at one point.
What were they saying?
And he was just covering it.
What were they saying?
Insinuating that his brother was lying.
I felt he was about a couple of things, not about being beaten up.
Yeah.
I do believe Trayvon was beating him up, but I do think he bullshitted about a couple of things. And maybe Judge Alex was right to say it was just to make yourself look better, when you know what you have to say. And maybe that was what it was.
Maybe.
And maybe they weren't case-deciding things.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's it. A lot of people were under the misconception that everything the prosecution was bringing up was relevant to the outcome of the case. And it just wasn't. That getting at when the prosecution gave their closing statement, and Guy said, "It's not about stand your ground; it's about staying in the vehicle." No, it couldn't have been further from anything. Staying in the vehicle. What does that even mean? It's not. There's nothing wrong with him having left that truck. Not one thing wrong with him having left that truck.
Legally, you're right.
Legally, and at the moment, in hindsight, knowing that if he left that truck, he'd have to kill someone, do you think he'd stay in the truck? I think he'd stay in the truck. At that moment, you got to look at this without the hindsight of knowing how this ended. He's a guy. He's on the phone with the non-emergency 911. He's told, hey, all right, keep an eye on him. Let us know what he does. Trayvon runs out of view. He's like, I want to see where this guy's going, and gets out of the truck and looks. Now, if nothing more happened, that's the most unexciting fucking thing that could have happened. We'd never, ever hear about it. It would have been a non-event. Since the shooting happened, now you look back at everything that had happened before the shooting, and it looks ominous, and it looks, oh, my God. The truth of the matter was, and what the jury believed, and what the defense said, and what the prosecution couldn't refute, was the fact that he got out of that truck to do nothing more than watch where someone that he had called the police on was going. That's it.
I agree, except for the fact, and this is what bothers me, that he bullshitted about a few facts. And I really think that he did bullshit about a few facts. And I don't believe a couple parts of his story, although I believe the part about him. It's like, there's something about it that bothers me so much. And when you look at, like, again, Fat Nick, I was 100% behind Fat Nick, and he profiled and he beat the shit out of a guy with a bat.
Yep.
And I was 100% on Fat Nick's side.
And
this is not about, I think racial profiling is terrible. This is something about this case, because this guy was not doing anything wrong.
Right.
That will always fucking bother me, because the prosecutor said something that really, he was walking home and he was minding his own fucking business. And I understand everything that happened.
Right up until he punched him in the face.
I know that, but we know that did not have to happen, and it just bothers me that something about this one really bugs me, and it's the fact that he pushed that scenario. And I know legally you're allowed to do it. I get that, but think if a guy comes up and is staring at your chick at a bar, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing? How you doing?" Like, you know what he's fucking, and I know legally.
No, I know. I'm not even talking legally now. Now I'm just talking figuratively, whatever. Who came up with this scenario where he did that? He walked one way, walked the other. Trayvon had plenty of time to go home. Trayvon chose to not go home, to confront the man that he said was following him. There's no indication that it went any other way than that. So why is it that George Zimmerman is now known as the guy that hunted down this innocent boy who wasn't doing anything? They never mention now on the news, when you watch it, the fact that he punched Zimmerman in the face. They never even talk about it. It's just he was trying to get home with his Skittles, and he was gunned down. Nothing anymore, now that the trial's over, nothing about him beating this man about the head.
Yeah.
And you could speculate as to what Trayvon and George's meeting was and what happened in that short period of time. But the fact is, if Trayvon kept walking, he'd have been home, as was George walking back to his truck. He did not make that turn to try to get down that sidewalk to follow Trayvon to his house. Trayvon would have been in his house.
Right.
Would have been in his house.
And you got to remember that Zimmerman's life is pretty much ruined, too.
Yeah.
So he got something out of this in the end.
And he's not done with court either. He has they may have a civil trial. They may have a
no way a civil trial even gets started on him. It can't. It cannot.
Because he was found not guilty.
He was found not guilty. No, he can. That his civil rights were taken away. That's what they did.
Civil trial.
Oh, civil. They could do that, a wrongful death, but they're probably jury found him.
They're probably going to do it just because of the pressure in America right now.
Yeah, the burden of proof is a lot less on a civil case.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But it was so slam dunk. They'd have a hard time. But again, you could sue anybody. And
what happens to George Zimmerman now? We got to ask his brother that. Because what the fuck? What could he do with your life at this point?
Yeah, I think he wants to go to law school, become some kind of lawyer.
It would help if we, again, I know you don't get to talk to defendants a lot, but just looking at his fucking face, it would help if you. Sometimes if you sit down with somebody and you talk to them and you hear them explain themselves, I don't know, man.
I wish he would have testified.
I understand why he didn't.
I understand the strategy by his legal team, but I think that would have been. Something a lot of people would have liked to see.
I didn't see anything during that police walkthrough tape or the interview with Hannity that looked to me like there was some hidden secret bad guy behind the soft-spoken, mild-mannered guy that he seems to be.
Well,
I don't see this secretive...
Then he should have went on the stand.
No, because the prosecution just knows how to fucking... You saw what they did with certain testimony. Yeah. They could twist it around and turn it into something it never was intended to be. It would have just confused the issue. Unfortunately, defendants that are innocent can't just get up there and testify because of the way lawyers can handle someone's testimony. It's amazing.
I would have had to testify if I was Zimmerman.
It would turn out to be the right move, too. Like, I wanted to see him, too.
Absolutely.
But it turned out to be the smart move, not to.
Let me go to Justin in Tampa. Justin. Hey, man.
Hey, I completely agree with Jimmy in the 2 points that legally, he probably wasn't responsible, but I think the guy was really hateable, and the reason he was is, Anthony just said, hey, if he knew he was going to get out of the truck and kill a guy, he wouldn't have gotten out of the truck. But in the Hannity interview, Hannity asked him that. If you could go over and do anything over again, would you? And his response was no, because it was God's plan.
Well, because he was talking about the whole linear thing of it, not just taking a piece, not in hindsight. He said if he could change anything, would he? What he was talking about was everything. You can't just say, oh, I wouldn't have gotten out of the truck.
Sure you can. You absolutely can.
I also think, to be honest...
I would change the one thing of not getting out of the truck.
I think that's also legal stuff, too, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I think that's legal stuff. I have to say that's, like, it's almost like if he says that in an interview or if he says the word regret, like Robert's not saying regret. There are certain things that in a legal case may be able to use against you if you say, like, I fucking regret something.
Jimmy, you're right. I get that, but he shouldn't have been on Hannity at all.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe.
That's the case.
No, it was. I think it was perfect.
That's why.
When was the Hannity interview, by the way? How long ago now?
I think about a
year ago?
About a year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to the people on Twitter that think I'm ignoring the Trayvon attack, no, I'm not. I know that happened. I didn't say he should have went to jail for second degree. I believe that happened. I believe that happened. I believe he was getting beaten up, but I'm not ignoring that. Mm-hmm. I wasn't that married to this either way. Like, I know I played kind of more devil's advocate arguing with you.
Yeah.
But literally when I was at the Comedy Cellar talking to the black comics, I totally not took up Zimmerman's side to the extent you did, but kind of argued that point of view.
Right. We got Robert Zimmerman's lawyer on the phone, who's a big fan of the show and loves yelling out Slabo, which I find very strange, but that's all right. What's up, Chris?
How are you?
Hello.
I see you want to debate Jimmy on this.
Yeah. I mean, just on a few things, and I apologize. I'm listening online, so or was listening online for about 20 minutes.
More importantly, is Robert coming this way or what?
Yeah. He's running about 15 minutes late. I think he's probably in the car right now.
All right.
So he'll probably be there about. He was supposed to be there about 6:45. I think he's going to be there about 7:15. But Jimmy, and Jimmy, I love you.
Thank you.
So I hope this. I mean, I truly do. And so, yeah, this is just a friendly little debate. But you say you.
Thank you, Jackie.
We have a guest.
We have a guest. We have a guest.
But it's amazing how the food comes
I know,
right
it's
on
right
time.
there. Love it.
We're heading toward a break, and the food is right there for us.
Right.
So we don't have to eat on air because the listeners hate that.
She's just a girl. She doesn't do it.
She's
What?
terrific, Sam.
Just a girl.
You got blinders on.
Right.
Go ahead there, Chris.
Yes, sir.
But you say that George should have been convicted of something. I mean, like, could you say what you think he could be?
Honestly, I'll be very honest with you. I realize I'm speaking more from emotion because there's something about this that just bothers me a lot. And a lesser manslaughter, which may not have, dude, legally it may not have even been on the table, and I understand that. I'm only talking about it just, I don't feel he did nothing wrong. I'm not debating the law and saying that legally, like, I understand that. Sometimes, you know, the law says one thing, but we feel something else. So I don't say that I just wanted to see him get convicted of something, but not second-degree murder, and not even the harshest manslaughter. There was just something, I don't think he should have walked totally.
Okay, I understand, and I mean, obviously, I completely disagree.
I understand, yeah.
But one of the reasons you talk about is that he said something, or he told the police something to the effect, and I might misquote it a little bit, that tonight you're going to die, or you're going to die tonight. And now, what if? All right, cops didn't take him to the hospital. I guarantee you, with a broken nose and a head like that, he had a concussion. I mean, football players get a concussion, and the head coach asks them, "Hey, what's your name?" And then they'll say, "Joe Montana."
Right.
You know, so if he had a concussion, what if Trayvon said, "You're gonna die tonight, motherfucker"? And he said, and when George spoke to the police, he said it as he did. Tonight's your last night of life, or whatever. I mean,
Could he have made a mistake? You're saying he could have made an honest mistake in recalling it in that moment?
yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Again, you could be right.
Oh, wow. That's what you were trying to say?
I just don't. I just don't. I just don't buy
Chris,
it.
are you nervous? Jesus.
Yeah, I guess a little bit.
Okay. I'm just trying to help you out because you're a lawyer. My God.
Chris,
a little nervous. All right. Go ahead,
What
Chris.
bothers me, Chris, is that George. Again, I don't think George is a stalker. I don't think he's out to murder a guy. I don't think he's this terrible fucking inhuman at all. The bottom line was, I know he had called 911 10 times. He did profile this guy, and I would have too in those circumstances. Like, I understand why that you profile that dude. I don't say that he's morally, I can't comprehend how. Of course I get why. It's a white neighborhood, a black guy in a hoodie walking through. You've had some robberies, you're checking him out. I get that. But when you go down that road and you got a pistol, there's just too many things that, like, oh, he's circling my car, but I'm getting out anyway. There's certain inconsistencies that just bothered me, and I think he had the courage of having the gun, which I probably would have had too in that situation, but not the know-how to stop that situation before it got to that point. And that, in that kind of intangible, inexplicable thing is what bothers me.
Now, did you see the FBI release a report on Thursday? Because they interviewed approximately 35 to 40 people down there, and they determined that there was no racial profiling and no racism involved.
Yes, they did. I was glad they didn't allow that into the case, but I don't really care what they said. We all, having a common human experience, understand that Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, I don't think he profiled him racially because he was a terrible man, because black guys had been robbing the houses.
Yeah, so who else would you look for?
Of course. You'd be dumb to profile an old Chinese lady in a hoodie.
Exactly.
So, again, I know what the FBI said. It doesn't matter to me what they said. We all know why he looked at Trayvon suspiciously, because I would have. Or the same reason they would look at me suspiciously if I was walking through Bedford-Stuyvesant or a black neighborhood. They would think I was there for drugs or whatever. You know, come on, we all understand that, even regardless of what the FBI said.
Okay, but he also didn't live there.
True.
So it's a gated community, and I don't know how many residents that there are, but it's a huge. You know, it might not be that big of a community, and so it's somebody you don't know. They're walking in the rain. They got their hoodie up.
Right. Well, basically, they're wearing appropriate rain gear.
Yeah, I mean, basically. But again, at the same time, all the injuries were on George.
Yep.
There was no injuries.
That's what did it. Yeah, all the injuries being on Zimmerman, that was a big thing.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, go ahead, but sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, I mean, basically, if I'm following you, all right, you're a celebrity, whatnot.
I like that angle.
Nice.
I'm sure, an A-lister. And, you know, and I start following you, whether I want an autograph or whatnot, you know, and I'm following you out of the Comedy Cellar or whatever.
Sure.
And I'm 10 feet behind you, and I follow you for 10 blocks. Does that give you the right to turn around?
No, of course not.
My head on the curb?
That's why, no, and I'm not saying that. I understand that point. No, of course not. I'm not saying that Zimmerman should have just stood there and gotten beaten up, and I get why he shot him in that moment, which is why I do not want to see this guy in jail for second-degree murder. I agree with you. The problem is the stuff leading up to that. You were just a fan following me. Again, when you look at the whole picture, the difference is he had a different thing in mind when he was looking at Trayvon Martin. And again, we've gone through this, but also I don't believe that he didn't know the name of that street. I just simply don't believe that. So I don't believe that piece of testimony. And to me, there's all these little weird kinks in the road or crossroads where he might have stopped and he didn't. And
Again,
while those,
in hindsight.
Right. And while those things might not make him second-degree murder culpable, I don't believe that he should have gotten off scot-free. And that's why I'm saying that, not because it's
but you can't just come up with some kind of mystery charge that you're not sure what it should have been.
I wish there was a lesser. Sure, you can, because I wish there was a lesser degree of manslaughter. I wanted to see him get some kind of a manslaughter.
Involuntary.
Well, they try to charge.
How many years is involuntary?
I don't know, in Florida.
But I don't even know if he should have gotten involuntary.
Right. Hey, Chris.
And there's also, you know, there's misdemeanors like assault and battery, but justification, meaning
negates all that, yeah.
Then manslaughter is what I would have wanted to see him get.
Well, well,
manslaughter was
doesn't qualify.
15 years, right?
But he was...
Plus a gun is 30. I didn't want to see him go to jail for that time.
He's defending himself. How does he have to get something? Why does he have to get charged with something when he was doing nothing more than defending his life?
That's why I wanted to see him, because I don't believe that what he did falls under the same category as if someone broke into your house and you shot them dead defending yourself. I feel there's a difference. And I know people are going to kill you. You don't believe me. I get it. I know the facts. I'm not saying fuck this piece of at all. But I just don't say it's the same as you, Anthony, walking down the street as a law-abiding gun owner and some guy molesting you on the fucking train or attacking you on the street and you're defending yourself.
Yeah.
Those, I'm 100% with you. But in this one, there was obviously other stuff. And maybe I can't find the proper charge because I understand it legally according to what the law said. I understand all that, too.
I know there's this, no one ever wants to put any ill will or blame toward the dead victim. I see the news is all over that. They don't want to touch it. But there does seem to be this aversion to saying, hey, if he just would have went home, yeah, he's the dead guy, but you know what? He shouldn't have punched him in the face.
I agree.
Well, not that everything, George got out of the truck. Wow, that's a terrible thing. Let's weigh that with punching a man in the face and see what's the worst of the two.
But the one guy who spotted the other guy and made this a connection with this other guy, like...
And called the police, and then kept an eye on him like he was told on the call. stopped following once he was told, we need you to do that. He was walking back to his truck. I mean, these things.
Again, I don't want to keep going because we already know.
Yeah.
The verdict is he was not guilty by an illegal. He gets out of the truck because he knows he has a pistol. But he doesn't just say that to the police. He doesn't say, I got out of the gun because I'm out of the car because I don't have a gun and I'm protecting myself. I'm protected. He says, I wanted to see the street name. I simply don't believe that.
Now, but
he was keeping an eye on him.
But he said, why? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The one eyewitness testified that he opened the door when he saw Trayvon beating the crap out of George, and he yelled out, I'm going to call 911 if you guys don't stop. And George screamed, no, please come and help me. That's not somebody who wants to pull up a gun and kill someone.
Right. You're right. And I agree, and I don't think that's why I do not think he's a second-degree murderer. And in that moment, I believe his self-defense. That's the point maybe I don't make clearly. I believe he shot him in self-defense. Yeah. And I absolutely buy that.
I know you're putting a lot into
the lead up to it, which, again, I know legally that gets me nowhere. I'm only telling you how I feel about it. I don't say that.
Just talking about raw emotions.
It just bothers me, and that's why it bothers me. But I don't think you're right. I don't think he meant to shoot him and wanted to shoot him.
Well, let's not go around in circles with Chris over here. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Chris, I got a question for you. Have you seen George?
Yeah, he actually, while we were talking just about 3 minutes ago, he just, no, George, I'm sorry. Robert just called, so, he's still on his way.
Okay.
But no, and anything I say, I want to preface by I've never spoken with George, and I've never spoken with his legal team, who I have immense respect for,
Wow,
Mark O'Mara.
You hang with his brother and you don't even get to see the man. That's a little strange.
Well, that's the reason why I was able to speak on the case.
Yeah,
I understand.
For legal reasons.
All right, Chris. Yeah. Are you coming over with Robert?
He's going to be in a little bit. I'm going to be on the phone if that's cool. I won't interject unless there's some kind of legal
thing. Sure.
All right. Thank you, Chris. We'll have you back on. He just walked in.
Hey, there he is.
What's up, Robert?
Good to see you, man.
Robert Zimmerman just walked into the studio.
There he is.
We were going to take a break and
do we have nobody working for the show?
How'd you walk in?
I know, he snuck up on us. How you doing, Robert?
Do you have a gun? At home? All right. Just want to make sure if we have a confrontation here, you don't shoot anybody.
Jesus.
You're profiling him.
Yes.
I know. Trying to bring some humor into this crazy world.
Robert.
What's up, Robert?
How you doing? You must be
guys.
Exhausted.
Very exhausted, but thanks for having me back.
You're all over the place over the weekend. And it was kind of weird because no one had heard from you for a while.
Right.
During the trial, you went to Twitter dark and TV shows and everything, and then all of a sudden it was good to see you back on TV again.
Thank you.
Were you? I know you must have had some concern and worries about what the verdict would have been, might have been. Right up until the moment they announced it, what were your feelings?
I came to New York preemptively expecting the right verdict, and I think we got the right verdict.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's cautious optimism, but they made the right call, and that's what we were expecting.
Were you confident throughout? Did you keep an eye on the trial? I mean, you must have the entire time.
We could not watch the trial itself, nor be in the courtroom.
Wow.
The only person who could be in the courtroom was our little sister, and that's because of something called the rule of sequestration, where if you're a witness for either party, you're excluded from the courtroom.
Right. So that must have been very frustrating because you didn't know how well or bad of a job the defense was doing for your brother, or how well or poorly the prosecution was doing.
Yeah, I mean, you see, things come up on Twitter, or you get emails about stuff, or, Google alerts, but you don't actually sit there and watch, the testimony.
Wait, you weren't watching on CNN like everyone else
You're not
the
allowed
last few
to.
days?
He's not allowed to.
You're not even allowed to?
I mean,
Crazy.
not during testimony, which
Right,
is everything but, jury selection's fine, opening statements, closing statements, those are non-evidentiary things.
Right.
But once testimony begins, no.
But are they making sure you're not watching, or are you taking a little peek here and there?
They're not, well, I mean, things, come up, yeah, but you're not technically supposed to sit there and just watch it.
Right, yeah. Wow.
I did not know that.
That's correct, because watching the trial, I was, fully involved, watching pretty much every minute of it. I noticed as time went by that this was really, obviously, a self-defense case. The prosecution was really running around in circles. The defense constantly had something to present. Like O'Mara said, it was the Bizarro case. I mean, the prosecution was acting like the defense and vice versa. So me watching it, I was very confident that as long as you didn't have some kind of weird thing and that X factor with the jury, you could always have that problem. Sure. But unless that happened, I absolutely saw an acquittal coming.
Yeah,
so it must have been rough for you not having seen everything.
It is kind of bizarre not following it that way, but I don't think we needed a trial to tell us what really happened.
Right.
In the situation, we knew it happened since it happened, since February of last year.
Yeah. So now after the verdict comes through, did you watch on TV?
I tried to watch it on TV. We got an announcement there would be a verdict. I was in my hotel lobby, and my phone got so many tweets and emails and texts that it just kind of like started floating up in the air because it was just blowing up. And I got to a TV as fast as I could, and I missed the live reading. But I did see it at CNN later.
How nervous were you when they said the verdict is coming? I mean, regardless of what you feel, it's still got to be a terribly nerve-wracking moment.
Yes, it is. We had heard that there was a jury question. They wanted clarification on the manslaughter instruction. So that was encouraging because it kind of told me that if the jurors were going through the instructions chronologically, that they had kind of gone past murder 2, or they would have just convicted of murder 2 right then and there.
And a lot of people are also saying, Anthony, what do you think of this? They have a question about manslaughter. Does that mean they're looking to give him manslaughter? And I was like, they have to understand the charge before they could then understand what the justification to negate that charge is.
Yes.
His self-defense justification. So I didn't feel that was a hurdle or anything. And like you said, I thought it was a good thing because it pretty much threw away the murder too, which I think they looked at and didn't even have to then look at the self-defense. I think they knew murder 2 just didn't apply regardless of self-defense in that situation.
I tend to agree, or they probably, or you never know, but they might have asked for some kind of clarification as to murder 2. But the way, manslaughter, the way when you just say it, it means a man was slaughtered. Someone killed someone, and it's defined so differently in every jurisdiction that non-attorneys coming and seeing something like that, the way that it is excused under the manslaughter instruction is either justifiable or excusable.
Right.
And justifiable is in your dwelling or to prevent a forcible felony, like you're getting robbed and you shoot someone, for example. And then excusable has its other stipulations. But then when you get to the self-defense instruction, which is the justifiable use of force, that kind of is a defense for both of them. So I think that's what happened.
What do you think it is that your brother represents? Because I had my issues with the verdict, although I did not want to see him go to jail for murder 2. But what do you think it is that he represents that's got people so upset? Because I don't think it's just George Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin. He's become like these things happen that make the whole country kind of focus, and it means something more.
I think the reprehensible media probably has a lot to do with
I do.
perception.
I think that when this happened in the beginning, there was just George and Trayvon Martin, for about a day. And I think that after, in my view, Miss Fulton and Mr. Martin had grief like any parent would. I think their grief was exploited. That's really what I feel in my heart by Mr. Benjamin Crump and Miss Natalie Jackson. And they started a race narrative, a smear campaign that the media was all too happy to.
Oh, they love that. Yeah.
They love it. Yeah. And so that's what repeating white man, black child, gated community, over and over and over again has its effect, and that's where the snowball effect, I guess, started. And combined with the vacuum of not knowing anything about George, and then we start to find things out about George, and then like he's not white, and then the term white Hispanic gets coined, and then we start finding out more about George, and then NBC edits their tapes to say, there's someone suspicious here. He's black. He's wearing a hoodie. In essence,
And it also didn't help that President Obama got involved as well.
Right.
I don't think it. I don't think it did. I don't think anyone really would have known how to make sense of that at the time. I think, my opinion is it was kind of a missed opportunity to be presidential and to just take race off the table. I think a white president saying, if I had a son, he would have looked like whomever, would have been laughed out of office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, putting the race angle in there was a little silly.
I thought, I don't know, that didn't, and again, I know Obama probably meant, that's one of those with kind of like, you have a certain deniability there. I think he could have also meant it in a very parental way. But, it could have been racial, or it could have been...
bring it up? He would have looked like, not acted, not been, not, he's basing it on color of skin.
No, he would look like Trayvon Martin, like I could see myself in a parent's shoes, like that could be my son. I didn't take it like he meant literally, like, he would have the same skin tone,
But and Jimmy, you gotta consider what were the Zimmerman parents going through.
I think
that's
that's something that only we felt that, I guess, attack at the time. My dad referred to it as hate. I don't have a son, but if I did have a son, I would hope that we would investigate whatever caused his death. And I don't think I have to put my ethnicity or my race into that statement.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the press was reprehensible. Like, they were disgusting with how they there was nothing fair about the way they had even on the cover of the Daily News today.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's a picture of an empty hoodie, and it lists Emmett Till, Willie Edwards, Michael Griffith, Hughes Hawkins. When will it end? Like, they're just completely biased, and they don't admit that they are. They act like they're just delivering news in an unbiased fashion.
Yeah, and I think that there's this effort to kind of label what happened here in this particular case or paint it with a broad brush of gun violence. And that was right out of the Crump playbook of senseless gun violence. An act of self-defense is now rolled into this broad category that has nothing to do with gun violence.
Well, because if you call it gun violence, you don't have to address the real issue, which was... first of all, there's a huge issue with black-on-black crime in major cities that doesn't get any attention. And also responsibility, personal responsibility. A lot of emotion came into this case, obviously, but if you look at what happened, you watch the news now, you'll never know Trayvon even touched George. You will not hear word one. You will hear unarmed teen walking home with his Skittles, gets gunned down by a neighborhood watch guy. Now, he was shot because he was walking black. He was a black man, boy walking home. Nothing anymore, since the trial's over, about him beating your brother's head.
Yeah, there's all these different directions that kind of the bar keeps getting lowered. It's that, or it's, but if you're having a fist fight, you shouldn't just pull out your gun and shoot someone, and people say yes and thanks for coming on my program, and they leave it at that, and it's nauseating. That's not what happened. If someone tries to take your gun, I've never had my nose broken, but I imagine, from what I hear, it's quite a blindsiding and disorienting injury, as it is, in pitch black, having your head pounded in the concrete after that, and then someone telling you, I'm going to kill you, and then trying to take your gun. I don't think you have much of a choice. Now, people who don't like guns would rather that gun not have been there, no matter what would have happened.
No matter what, right.
So they are the ones who resort to lowering the bar by saying, well, it was just a fist fight, and this guy had Skittles, but this guy brought a gun. Well, people in our society are armed, and if you go and break people's noses and sit on them and pummel them and rain down blows, and you don't know that they're armed, you might unfortunately find yourself
on the business end of it.
Unfortunately.
And again, I believe his self-defense. Like, I do believe he was being beaten up, and I believe Trayvon Martin was kicking the shit out of him. I don't fault him for pulling that. It's really weird feelings I have about it, because I don't think that he's this terrible. I have a hard time believing that he didn't know the name of that street when he got out of the car. That's a really tough one for me to swallow, that he did not know the name of the street.
I think
what would be the motive? What would be the motive of him not telling the police what the name of the street is, though?
Honestly, I think he did say the name of that street, but I don't think he said the name of where he had lost sight of Trayvon. It wasn't a street. It was like a cross between homes. And I think if you hear the recording, he does say Retreat View Circle or whatever, but he doesn't know when you cross behind homes and you just come out on this other road, that there's no way you would have driven it. you don't drive that. You have to like walk it to get there. And yeah, there are only 3 streets, but I guess in that at that time, at that moment, he didn't know it exactly, and he was trying to get the best information.
Yeah, that one has been very difficult for me. And again, I don't think that means that he set out because I'm going to hunt this guy down. You know, the Judge Alex, again, I have to credit him, raised good points about, well, sometimes you say things to make yourself look a little bit better, even though what you're saying is basically, remember he said that? Like, what you're saying is basically true. I simply don't, I think that he wanted, again, this is my opinion, I think that he wanted to further the contact, but not to a point of violence or not to a point of, I think that he wanted to be there when the cops got there and had the cops go, great job, you got him. I think that he wanted this to go a little further.
I would think that he was just watching him. There was no indication before or during what happened that would lead me to believe he wanted to confront him. He was on the phone with the police. He had called them. He knew the police were literally minutes away. He wanted to watch him so he could go, there, officer, there he is. He walked around that way. He went this way. I kept my eye on him. And now, finally, you guys are here, and we know where this guy is.
He went in that house, or
right.
he got in a car and left, or whatever.
Something. But it seems to me that the narrative here that people want you to believe is the second he got out of that car, he became this hunter. There's no gray area. There's no, he got out of the car to look around the corner and see where he went. He got out of the car to keep an eye on him. He got out of the car to follow him from 20 yards behind, never getting any closer. It's once he got out of the car, he was pouncing on him.
That's not what I'm saying, though.
But that's what a lot of people.
That's the power of words, and I think right out of Crump's script, the word pursuit has a very specific implication as opposed to follow.
Yes,
you can follow something perpetually, but pursuing means you intend to.
Stalking was another one that was used, and following even sounded ominous when they put it in the context of what happened.
Well, yeah, it became synonymous. I mean, with pursuing or hunting down or whatever. After you repeat that enough.
Chased was another one. He chased down this boy, and it's like, God, stop with trying to make this something it's not.
Right.
What's George been doing since the verdict was read?
My understanding is he's resting a lot.
Just resting?
A lot, yeah, a lot. Just kind of decompressing and, you know.
Is he in hiding, kind of? Or?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, we all are in Florida.
Right.
We're all at different places.
Have you debated leaving Florida? Like, maybe not at this moment, but at some point, like, this is probably not the place to be?
Yeah, the debate was very short. It's not the place to be. Yeah.
Hi, Texas.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Jeez. It is amazing.
That's got to be scary as hell, walking through life now.
It is. I feel like it. I feel a little bit more concerned for George because he hasn't been doing that. You know, he's George, and now when the trial came up again, and people are seeing him day in and day out. He had a very strict curfew before in his house by 6 p.m. for most of his trial. It later got extended to 10 p.m. because of kind of the later court sessions that we're having. And having an ankle monitor and this awkward device you carry around with you the size of a Starbucks cup, that communicates with that ankle monitor that kind of says, if you thought I was George Zimmerman, now I really am George Zimmerman.
Oh, right.
So it's kind of, you have to wear the right shoes. You're always paranoid of getting it wet or straying too far from that, I think they call it a PTU, a personal tracking unit or whatever. You go more than 100 feet from it and you're back in jail, and you have that paranoia for a long time, and it's an adjustment.
What was going on outside the house every night? There had to be people around all the time, right?
No, we
that's got to be really
we just
creepy.
Vanished off the face of the earth, and just nobody knows where we are at all.
Yeah,
no one figured it out.
No one figured it out. They tried.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's why I'm asking. I would, in this day and age, I would assume they would find out where you guys were.
Spike Lee's probably looking, so he could tweet it out.
Well, that's amazingly ignorant to tweet out, especially of the family. Or even the guy before he's been through court. You can't fucking Twitter somebody's address.
Yeah, and he got the wrong people.
Yeah,
I know. Of course.
Poor old couple was like, what happened?
You guys picked
terrible.
You guys picked a house or an apartment complex where you got neighbors that are just clueless, huh? That not one person saw, like,
we do things,
George getting fresh air or opening a window or something?
Well, we do things very discreetly. Very, very discreetly.
I understand all that, but in this day and age, that is really hard to do, no matter who you are.
Well, they found us last time, several times. So we wisened up and learned from it. And
what kind of life you think George is going to have now? I mean, a lot of people say his life is ruined.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, it won't be the same, and it'll have this other dimension of looking over your shoulder all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know that if you asked George that he would even be able to answer that question.
Right.
I mean, this is like the second day of freedom.
Yeah.
It's almost like a new, reality.
And there's a theory he gained all that weight, so now he could lose the weight and he could kind of sneak back into society. That was going around Twitter for a while.
Yeah, I've heard all kinds of theories about the weight to make him look like a, out of shape, unable to defend himself, guy or whatever. He just gained weight because
the
stress
of that.
I believe that. I believe that.
You got to be, the depression that you'd feel also being in that situation. You're going to help him out, put him on the workout regimen you're on or something?
I'm going to try. I'm going to try to motivate him as best I can.
Yeah.
What does he do from here, though? Like, okay, he's acquitted, but like for the I'm thinking like, if say he gets married in 15 years, it'll be like, Trayvon Martin killer, George, like he's always going to have that.
It's not like he can go fill out a job application and have you ever been charged with any felonies? Yes, murder, second degree. But he's suing NBC. We'll see. How
I agree with that.
out.
I think he should sue the news department. That was terrible.
Absolutely.
That was a terrible edit.
And what about CNN? I guess broadcast his social security number and.
They did. I don't know who's. I think obviously that's CNN's fault for their standards of care, but somebody put it up on that screen, so there might be more than one party responsible.
They put it on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
They put it on the screen in court.
On the screen in court.
Okay.
And then
which was bad enough for the public in a non-broadcast trial, to see people's social and date of birth and everything. But and they made a big deal of people were gloating about stealing his identity and everything else. So.
It's like, first of all, why would you now want... I don't think his credit rating is going to be very good for a while.
Right.
As far as... Give it a whirl.
Yeah.
Can he get a new number? Can you get a new social security number?
I think you can.
Well,
I think
really?
You can. Yeah.
Yeah, people are outraged that he gets his gun back. That's a big story today in the paper.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I think people put a lot of symbolism in that gun. He, in fact, committed no crime. We have the presumption of innocence that we carry when we're accused, and that presumption of innocence doesn't leave us. We are presumed innocent when we're found not guilty. That same presumption applies. So if he, in fact, committed no crime, there's no reason
he leaves that court the same way he was before the crime was ever committed. So why?
Do you think, though,
take it?
and again, I know this is kind of a fucking, like a pukey left-wing college professor question, but do you think that while we do have the presumption of innocence, do you think that that was kind of, and again, a courtesy he didn't afford Trayvon Martin walking through that complex was the presumption of innocence?
I think it's clear to me when I hear what happened and when I talked to George when this happened that something aroused his suspicion. And again, this notion that Trayvon was walking, I just don't agree with that. I think my brother would have to be, crazy to pick up the phone and call the police because someone was walking. It sounds to me more like someone was loitering, loitering aimlessly, not in its pouring rain. It's not something that happens in that subdivision. People know where they live and they walk in their house, Or
did he say what he was doing?
Yeah, he said it in the call. He said there's this guy out here just standing out here between the houses looking at the homes, and it's raining. He looks suspicious. And he said in subsequent reports, that's what aroused his suspicion was just his kind of like nonchalant attitude about being where he was. He wasn't in front of a house. He wasn't like in a driveway. He wasn't like locked out of a home or trying to get in it. He was actually between homes, and one of those homes had actually been broken into. I don't know if you've heard of Frank Taffy, but that was the house that got broken. Yeah, Crazy Frank.
Crazy Frank Taffy.
Yeah, but that was one of the homes, and unfortunately, in that community, when people do that, as we heard from the witness on the stand, when someone came to her door and started beating on the door, I mean, you might get people running around the back and coming in, or someone's just kind of standing around as a lookout or whatever. So I think people think of what happened and don't put it into context of what was happening around George, around that community. I think that particular witness on the stand that talked about being, having the scissors in one hand, her baby in the other, and backed into a corner in a room on the phone with the dispatcher, and there's these three guys in her house just stealing whatever they want. That's the reality of that community. you know, your home gets invaded, and if you don't have the means to defend yourself, too bad.
And if you backtrack from the shooting to what George was doing that evening, with that hindsight, you could say anything. What he should have done, what he shouldn't have done, this. But in context, as he's driving out, he sees this. Why wouldn't you do something? Why wouldn't you call the cops? And if the shooting never happened, like I said, you never would have heard of this. It would have been George calling the cops showing up, maybe talking to Trayvon, maybe not. Maybe, you know, all that would have been fine. Everything leading up to the shooting still would have been completely fine. Why? Because of the shooting. Now, I understand this sounds weird. Because of the shooting, everything before it is bad? No, right. It was perfectly reasonable for a man that's familiar with what's going on in his neighborhood to see an anomaly and go, I want to look into this. I want the police to look into it.
Yeah, I wish it were like an animation now that trial is over, so people can understand where he was, where this guy was, why that was weird that he was there.
Right.
How many times the homes around where he was standing had been broken into. And when this notion, put this notion to rest of following, hunting down, pursuing, stalking, whatever, because as soon as he gets out of his truck and starts walking in the direction where he already saw him ran, he says, I can't see this guy, he's gone. He ran, he took off.
Yep.
That's it. You know, so you can't follow or pursue or hunt down what you can't see.
God, it's like, oh, he's gone.
But in hindsight, one thing about hindsight is that when they looked at what Trayvon Martin had on him, he didn't have burglary tools. And then people kind of know, well, he left the All-Star game. He was coming back to watch. He was talking to that fucking amazing that he could hold a conversation with that Rachel Jontel, whatever her name was. But that's who he was talking. So when you look, hindsight shows us that he really wasn't doing anything. While you understand why somebody might go, hey, what's he doing?
I think
but he really wasn't.
Right, but I think that's taking like an extra step.
Getting codeine and trying to make purple drink.
What's that? We know that now. Yeah, but I mean that's kind of like even assuming that George would have thought that. I don't think he thought that. I don't think George sees a person and has an issue with that person. I think George sees his neighbors and takes issue with keeping them safe or their homes not invaded. More so than this guy's going to burglarize, but he might be here to rape, or he might be here to be an arsonist, or he might be here, like, he's not getting into people's heads, you know. But I think he just saw this guy around these homes that had been victimized and
called the cops.
But in fairness, it's just a different way of saying it. Like, I understand. I don't think he was out to fuck Trayvon Martin. I think that he cared about his neighbors. However, when you care about your neighbors and you see a guy there who you interpret as obviously some sort of possible threat to your neighbors, you are making a judgment on that person because you're interpreting him as a possible. If that was a 75-year-old woman just standing there with a cane, it wouldn't have struck him. So he did make a snap judgment, which, again, I get why he made it, and I probably would have made the same one.
But I mean, of course. But
you know what I mean? The reality.
Why wouldn't you look at somebody as suspicious if he fits the description of people that have done robberies and burglaries in the neighborhood, as opposed to, you know, if 12 times an old woman had broken into that, then he absolutely would have called the cops.
I'm not playing that. Like, I feel as comfortable with a young Islamic guy on a plane as I do an old. Like, I get why profiling means something, of course.
And again, that word profiling, I have to just repeat, you know, George called the police on white people, Hispanic people, black people, because the garage door was open, because kids were playing in the street at a bad corner and somebody might have hit him or whatever. He said on many of those calls, I don't want to approach these people, I don't want to get near them. You know, there's evidence of that if you listen to a lot of those calls. I think what was, you know, clear in that community was the area, the geography around where Trayvon was kind of, and now there's a fence there, but there wasn't at the time. This was this cut through where a lot of crime came and went. And I don't think he made a judgment so much about Trayvon just simply being there, as much as the NAACP wants you to think it's because he was black, or Al Sharpton wants you to think because it's a hoodie or whatever. It's because those actual homes that are right there really were getting robbed. So people in that community, I think, had a way to go about their life. And you know, we know now that George probably really did know his neighbors really well because he hadn't ever seen that guy before, and it turns out he was right. You know, so that's all he knew about Trayvon, was that he was a stranger, some guy he'd never seen before, and he is around. If someone pulls a fire alarm, you don't look at the guy that's in the bathroom and go, you look like a trickster to me, so it was probably you. You go and look at who's standing near the fire alarm, you know, and I think that guy was just standing near the things that had been victimized.
Sure.
And that's what was profiled. Was
Absolutely.
And what's wrong
However,
with
though,
making-
I'm sorry, if it was a couple days after the fire alarm got pulled, it would be a bit of a different story. If that was in the moment of a robbery, of course I wouldn't even be saying that. But it was. I think what happened, we all, at least common sense dictates to me why he saw Trayvon, and I know George can't come out and say this, and I don't think he's a terrible person for looking at it. The reality was, in that moment, Trayvon Martin was doing nothing wrong. This is one case where I think if you profile people, and by profiling you just mean make a judgment by looking at somebody, according to what other people who look like that person have done. And it's accurate, because positive profiles happen all the time. Nobody minds fucking Dominican pride, you know, but if you say something bad about Dominicans, people hit it. Personally, I think that he made a snap judgment about a guy who, in that case, just was not doing anything wrong. And that's the danger of it, is that this type of stuff happens where you get a guy who just wasn't doing anything wrong.
And
right up until he punched him in the face.
I'm talking about the initial contact. Yes.
Yeah.
At the same time, George wasn't doing anything wrong either.
That's true.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
so what?
Wait, I got it.
Yeah, sure.
I guess a strange question. So the verdict is read, and they go to George. Okay, you're free to go. Mm-hmm. How the fuck does he leave? I need to know how he got out of there.
He went he had been leaving through the regular door of the courtroom.
Right.
You know, when he was incarcerated, they bring you through a door that, you know, kind of leads you through the back. But it turned out this time that's the door he went through.
Right.
To go and get security. He couldn't leave with our parents through the regular door of the courtroom. I don't mean the courthouse. I mean just the courtroom.
The room.
Yeah, so he went out a separate entrance.
And then what kind of vehicle did he get in? Because I need to know.
I know it was...
There were all those protesters out there, and I mean, if I was in that situation, they're like, "You're free to go." I'd be like, "Well, wait a minute."
Yeah, they took
have a bulletproof vest at least or something.
They took care of his security, and that was, you know, step one. Is that if it didn't matter what the
and the
verdict
media
was
couldn't figure out what car he was in.
Nope.
That's so amazing to me in this day and age.
can I tell you one thing he should do for the record? Get rid of that gun. Seriously, have it, for real. Have it destroyed and have it public knowledge, because that becomes a trophy for anybody who wants to get that gun and make a statement. Get rid of that fucking gun. You got to get a new gun.
I wouldn't disagree. I mean, I don't being entitled to get your gun or other property back is different from him having some kind of fixation with that particular gun.
But let the public know it's gone. Get rid, because then somebody all of a sudden is like, "Hey, I want to get that gun," just in honor of get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you feel about?
This is the only time I've ever disagreed with Robert, but I think that gun is the last thing that's going to keep him safe. Personally,
no, I think it's the symbol of that gun. I understand what Jimmy's saying. I mean, get rid of that gun, and if you want to continue to carry, go get another one.
Oh, get a gun.
Yeah.
He has to have one now.
I know what Jimmy's saying.
Right.
But that particular gun is kind of a target in a weird way.
It becomes a symbol of the gun that they... Right. Some asshole... And again, if you go out and you harm George Zimmerman, you're an asshole. If you know, and somebody wanted to harm him just to get that gun that shot Trayvon, get rid of the one that shot Trayvon.
Or just sell fake ones on eBay and represent them to be people that.
But you got to realize, if he went out to get a new gun, it's going to be all over the news too. Sure. Oh, what, another death?
No, not in Florida. There's no registration. So
there
anybody
isn't.
can buy it. No, you just go buy a gun, and as long as the person you give it to is
that
over
seems
18.
crazy.
Wow.
Robert, so you were in New York last night?
Yes.
What do you think of all the protesters marching all over the place? Times Square had a lot of people. I would assume you were close to Times Square last night.
I was, and we didn't know what was happening. And the driver could not get to the Fox building. And I decided with my friend who I was with, why don't we get out and walk? And Fox had all they had told me was, do not get out and walk. Before this, you know, because I didn't know if it was for time or what. They didn't tell me. So I get out and start walking, and I guess I'm on, I look down 6, and I see people backed up, you know, and I was like, oh, shoot, that's that demonstration.
Oh, my God.
So Fox took really good care of me. They came out, they met me on the street, and there were like 50 officers that ran out of the Fox between the doors. I don't know where they came from, because I went in the back door on 48th, and they just like rushed out into the street, and they got me in there with a lot of security and out of there through side doors, different doors.
Imagine getting caught up in that, where the people think it's like, hey, look, it's Robert Hitler coming down the street.
No,
at
then you
that
better just
point.
start chanting with them. Boo, George. Boo, George. You better fucking jump right in.
Right to the Fox door.
Oh, God.
Oh, Jimmy.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well,
so he should get rid of that. I'm going to say that again for the record. Get rid of the gun. And get a new one. That's a bad fucking thing to hold on to.
How was the family, parents, and whatnot?
They were very emotional that day. The next day, they just kind of rested. It was like a pajama Sunday, you know, and they're also getting used to this new reality where they're not the family of the accused. You know, they're the family of the exonerated. So
Right.
that's different. And I think they're going to take some time off. I think everybody's going to kind of get away for a while before we kind of regroup and go from there, but just kind of get out of town until things boil over a little bit. I think that's the smartest thing to do.
Absolutely. Lay low, relax. Yeah. What'd you think of the lawyer's job? Obviously, they did a great job.
Amazing job.
Yeah.
I never doubted Mark's presentation ever for a second. I never doubted Don West's examination of very technical or more sophisticated things in court.
Yeah.
Never for a second. Enough that I got here because I knew what the verdict would be.
Right.
When I saw Mark's closing argument, I was like, wow, this is like brilliant.
It was amazing.
He was impressive, man.
The way he kept on that jury about burden of proof,
right,
and justification, and telling them, look, you can't just make things up,
right,
based on what the prosecution.
Right.
And then he would give them the evidence. Now here's evidence, and then again he'd go back to, but let's remember the burden of proof. But it was an amazing mix of everything he needed to tell that jury, and then even the rebuttal by the prosecution was so out there and vague, and you know,
it was emotion versus facts. That's pretty much, if you had to boil it down in 2 words, is these are the facts, this is what was not proven, and this is our burden in this country, and then here's what these people want to yell and scream, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're not supposed to see the prosecution going, what if? Let's assume, what if this happened? What if the... No, they're supposed to be the ones that said this happened.
Could it have been the sprinkler?
Could it have been? It's like, no, that's
or
what the
you
defense
decide.
says.
He kept saying, you decide. That really was a bad, you know, I thought emotionally he did a good job.
Hey, that's you right there on the TV. That's you right there.
That's me, and Chris Cuomo's trying to get me.
He did try to get you. I watched that last night.
Yeah, he had that interview with Sean Hannity, and that was, you know, presented in court as well. And I don't think that people who are forthcoming and forthright with what they do and believe they're doing the right thing should then go back. That's the way we were taught always as children. If you do the right thing all the time, or what you believe to be right, you don't have to go back and make amends for that and say, it should have been this way. If it should have been that way now, and you can think of that in hindsight, then it should have been that way then.
Will George carry a gun now?
I don't know. You know, I heard from Piers Morgan actually last night that his gun was returned to him, or that at least he's eligible to have it returned to him. I don't know that he'll carry a gun. I would think that he has more reason to now than before, because there are so many more people who want him dead and that know that he's free, but at the same time he can move about a little bit more than he did before.
I will say, equally handsome in person.
Yeah, he was trying to get, like, you know, like...
attorney had said, of course he feels regret. No one ever wants to end up in this situation. I found that interesting because they were a little different on that issue.
I think his brother was seizing upon that word. I think there's such sensitivity surrounding all the legalities that are going on here. That he wanted to make sure he had his brother's best interest at heart.
Implies
took every question
regret
that there
is different than remorse. I mean, you can't say, I had to do this or I would be dead. I had to do this action to save my life, and I really regret doing it.
Yeah.
You know, because that means you shouldn't have done it.
But you can give it regret as an overall, look, I regret this whole thing. I regret the entire day happened. You know, you can regret something in the abstract.
More importantly, we asked way better questions than CNN. So
yeah. And there's remorse and feeling sorrowful about something, or having, you know, I think what George said there is that he wished that there had been some other outcome. You know, wishing is fine too.
Anything else he could have done.
Right.
You know, but this is what had to be done.
I want to ask too.
Yeah.
What did you think when you heard the opening joke? By as people in George's family and the attorney, did you guys go, oh my, there goes the case?
Well, we understood what he was doing. Then Alan Dershowitz said it was grounds for I think he did a mistrial.
Grounds for a mistrial.
Like in the first sentence, so that was kind of weird for lack of competent counsel. But I understood what he was trying to do. I think those jurors were It wasn't funny, and they changed their tone right away, and I think they got the message loud and clear. But yeah, it was a little bizarre.
Yeah, and then he had to say, "Come on, that's funny." Oh boy, you never want to have to say that.
What did you think, Chris, as an attorney?
Oh, that is definitely not the way you want to start out a murder 2 case. I mean, there's nothing funny about it, and you don't have a rapport with the jury yet. It was Don's only mistake. I mean, I have immense respect for him, but I was watching that live, and I saw that, and I was like, holy shit, and it scared the hell out of me. And then, he calmed down.
Yeah.
Like, a knock-knock joke, and then, he set it up for about a half hour.
Oh my God, the setup went forever. It was just poorly told.
Here's what he should have done. As a comedian who has bombed many times, he should have played that off like he meant it serious. Like when it bombed, he should have made it look like he was making an overall statement. Like not like knock knock, who's there? You're on the trial, whatever it was. He should have said, and that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. He should have put it
like some serious.
Like of course I didn't mean that humorously.
Oh boy.
Oof. Yeah.
It really should have been, if he was going to tell a joke like that, it should have been done during jury selection.
Right, during selection, maybe. It was just, and boy, thank God the news didn't show it too much. It was all they showed over and over again.
Can I be honest? There's something beautiful about what he said. This is where he reacted like a comedian. What? Nothing?
Nothing. I know. What?
Right.
Nothing.
That's something Rich Voss would say in Connecticut.
What? Nothing?
I don't blame the media for playing that. That one was way too easy.
Over and over again.
Robert, you handled yourself well in front of the media. I mean, all these guys gave you tough questions and stuff, and I thought you did a great job for your brother. What's going to happen to you now? Do you want to go into something like that?
I think after tomorrow, I'm just going to spend time at home and decompress and relax and reconnect and reassess. And
what do you do for work now before you finish?
This.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for free.
This doesn't
pay very much.
What did you do before this?
Yeah, I was a for-hire musician. I worked under contract for a agency that hired out musicians and sent them to different venues to do classical music.
What's your instrument?
Voice, tenor.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So I have to leave my American spirits out of the picture now. 'Cause I kind of picked up that habit a little from all of this
stress and pressure. Yeah. Smoking does rule when you're stressed out.
Yes,
oh
it does.
Boy.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I gotta get you over the house to sing some karaoke with me then.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Awesome.
That is a kind of a cool place to go and hang out and just lose yourself in a sea of alcoholism.
And vomit. Listen. Oh my God.
Now, I could see you doing this for a living, man, because you handled yourself well on TV.
Yeah, very.
Giving your opinions on other things.
I think that I think George was railroaded, and I feel I think that what I did what I tried to do was advocacy, and hopefully, this doesn't happen again. But if it does, I will make sure that that person has an advocate. And sometimes the best advocate is an attorney in the legal sense, and there's also advocacy in the public realm, the rhetorical sense, and trying to make sense out of things for people who are just hearing one side of something. And what I definitely learned is never, ever allow there to be a vacuum just because the Black Panthers are trying to kill you or whatever. Don't just let other people fill in the blanks for your life or your loved one's life. You have to be right there in front when people are calling you racist and the police department racist and everything else. You have to fight fire with fire early and often.
Absolutely. What a contrast you are from Frank Taffy.
Yes, I know. I've heard.
What's Frank's deal? What's like his history?
He has a good heart.
Yeah.
He's lost 2 sons.
He's talked about that.
Yeah, and I think that he has also kind of opened up about that. Maybe he feels that this is, kind of like he sees George as a son, perhaps the one he actually can protect from.
Right.
His demise at the hands of Miss Corey, or whatever. But Frank started in a good place, and I think Frank is unique in that he gets that community. He actually lived there. His home was actually burglarized. He'd actually see the police. Take Frank and George out of it. A community of 200 homes in 13 months, there's 400 calls to the police.
Wow.
So you do the math, and now you'll start to begin to understand, how on edge people were that lived there anyway. 400 times in 13 months. a community of roughly 200 homes calls the cops. So those cops are going out there all the time.
Yeah.
You come home, there's cops. You know, you leave for work in the morning, there's cops at somebody else's house. You might get a call that your home was burglarized that day or whatever. You know, so I think when Frank was particularly incensed that the racial narrative was making traction, and he, for the way he saw it, was nobody really understands Retreat at Twin Lakes and what an awful place this is to live. You know, and this isn't a real gated community. It's just a very normal.
Right, right.
Is the community kind of surrounded by a crime-ridden area? Is that how it works? Is it because a lot of times you find like a nice neighborhood kind of surrounded by a rougher neighborhood?
My understanding, roughly, is that it kind of does butt up on one side against a rougher neighborhood, and a lot of people, but not all people, but you know, would come from that community or kind of just commit crime and vanish into that community.
Right.
But you know, they caught people in the community robbing from their neighbors too. So it wasn't, you know, necessarily that it came from that, but yeah, that was an issue.
Sounds exhausting to live there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Can you think of somebody who was the unfairest in the press to your brother, and not necessarily like you know, again, NBC which was reprehensible, but like, is there like a guy like, was it Piers Morgan or one of these guys that you thought was just got it wrong?
I bet Nancy Grace is up there.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
Jesus.
I mean, her sexual appeal aside, a delightful woman. She is.
Just a delight.
She really is. Yes. Yes, Frankenberry, you're on the phone.
It's just a ray of sunshine, isn't she?
She's really a wonderful, wonderful
Has she ever
woman.
seen a sunny day? Holy fuck.
Just an atrocity. Was she the unfairest, or who would you say got it wrong the harshest?
She's unfair. I don't think people take her very credibly.
Right.
You know, I don't think she can do that much damage. It's kind of like watching a parody of herself when you watch that show. And she's
really
the only
is.
one who doesn't know it. But
Wow, very
yeah.
good. Yeah. Seriously, very
Terrible.
good.
Have you
Yeah.
spoken to her? Like, did you do a show?
No, they tried to get me on her show, and of course I would never do something.
Frank
like
had
that.
it covered.
Yeah, Frank had it covered.
He
yeah.
would pound on her.
I mean, anything on HLN is the whole entire purpose of HLN is that they can get away with more opinion, you know,
Right.
to spin what happens on CNN, and they use their
promotion and stuff.
yeah,
right?
their sound and whatever, and so CNN can be officially news.
Yes, CNN's news, but then HLN tries to use the CNN connection as legitimacy. So they're like, look at us. Meanwhile, it's not news. It's all this sensationalist opinion. Like
Speaking of that, we should get Jenny Hutt on the phone right now.
Oh God, she's on that one with Dr. Drew.
She's been hanging with Dr. Drew.
Oh yeah.
Can we get Jenny Hutt on real fast? Ask her a question.
And we know her, and I would pound her about it. It's like, what are you talking about? You sound like an idiot up there when you're just going off with the same line that everyone else is on the news is going off on.
Let's get her to ask a
courage
question.
and look into things and say things that not everybody is saying because it doesn't fit their little storyline here.
Emotion requires no critical examination of fact whatsoever, and it's so easy. It's like a kid wants a gumball, and you say, "Well, I don't have a quarter," and the kid goes, "I don't care, I want the gumball." You know, and that's what I feel now, and I don't understand what that has to do with the quarter.
Excuse me, E-Rock, get him some gum.
Yeah, so if you have to examine fact and actually use your brain,
Right,
you know, and
yeah.
actually come to a conclusion that your heart might not agree with, and disagree with yourself in that sense.
And it's too much work, it seems. It's
Far
too much work to study, look into something, cross-check something you hear. I saw people retweeting things that were absolutely false, and you know that they just see it and assume, well, that's got to be true. Boom, retweet. It's like, look into it.
We got Jenny Hutt on the line.
Jenny,
we got George's brother, Robert Zimmerman, in studio, and we figured
Hi, Robert.
we figured you'd owe the whole family an apology, so we'll start here. Go.
Oh, I don't believe that. Anyway.
What anyway? You and Dr.
I don't
Drew.
think I owe anybody an apology. I think that I have to leave the verdict as is because that's the verdict, and that's really how it ends.
You were saying things like, I think George killed an innocent boy, and without putting anything in context.
Hold on. I do still feel uncomfortable about the whole thing. That said, as I
don't think
said
anyone's
online on
comfortable
Twitter,
with the whole thing.
that we have to respect the verdict. I do think that the prosecution did not present an adequate case, and therefore George Zimmerman was found
Do
not
you
guilty.
think they didn't present an adequate case because they didn't have an adequate case? There's a big difference.
I think we'll never really know exactly what happened because Trayvon Martin's dead.
Well, Jenny, let me ask you, what do you think? And I have to, and I've argued with Anthony about this, and I've taken up in a way for the prosecution side. But what do you think they could have said that they didn't? I don't think that they just didn't have the evidence.
Well, I think it was beyond their not having. Listen, I think if you believe George Zimmerman's account, then I think not guilty was the right answer.
But it also jives with the evidence. That's just that when people go, oh, it's only his word against the dead guy. It's like, no, it has to jive with the evidence also.
Yeah, but in truth, the evidence the way the evidence was presented, it was on the burden of the prosecution to present enough evidence to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that George Zimmerman was guilty of murder too. The only job that the defense had was to prove reasonable doubt.
And they went above and beyond and actually proved innocence. It was an amazing job by the defense doing what the prosecution normally does. They only needed reasonable doubt. They proved what happened.
Hey, guys, the defense did a terrific job. Yeah, I will not say here or say on TV that the defense did anything but a terrific job for their client. But
Jenny,
my position remains that it's a horrible tragedy. I feel incredibly sad about the loss of this young life, and I do think that George Zimmerman was somewhat quick to trigger, and that's how I feel. And
Jenny, Robert, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Robert has a question for you, though. Robert has a question for you. Sorry.
Jenny, I think I met you when I did Dr. Drew.
Indeed, you did, Robert.
I did. How are you? I'm curious about, when people say the burden of proof is on the state. I get that. That's in every situation. But do you think that this man, Chief Bill Lee, who has no job now because racism ruled the day, and him and his entire department were smeared as racist by Ben Crump, and do you think that Norm Wolfinger, Ben Crump wrote a letter to the Justice Department saying that he had driven in the rain to decide and conspire with the racist police chief not to charge George? Do you think he wouldn't have wanted his job and every employee who worked for him? And do you think that the entire Florida Department of Law Enforcement was corrupt and also conspiring to...
This is what I think. This is what I think. I believe it was a valid prosecution. I met your friend Frank a bunch of times on the TV show. I don't believe it was a malicious prosecution. I believe that there's now the Department of Justice making some sort of inquiry as to whether there was a civil rights violation.
That'll never wash. Never.
Listen, to me, I don't know that it'll wash either. However, that's still going on, and there is an aftermath in this whole event. And in a way, I do have I do have compassion for your brother in that not being incarcerated, he's not going to have much of a free life either at this point because society is somewhat inflamed. But it is what it is. I mean, it's a hard
right. But back to
any way you look at it.
I understand all of that, and that's your opinion, and that's great. But back to the actual question. The actual question is, all of these people who the only thing they needed to set an arrest in motion for anything was one shred or inkling of probable cause in any way, shape, or form, and any one of those cops could have gone to his house and arrested him, and the entire police department. Do you really think that every one of those people was conspiring to not arrest George for racist reasons the way it was presented in the media? Do you really think that's the reality, that Chief Lee would rather be fired by the city council?
By the way, that was not something that I looked into. I really only looked at the actual
surprise.
I didn't care.
That requires
that requires looking into something. The point here is this never should have gone to trial in the first place. This man's life never.
I recognize being on your show this morning that there's no way that anyone's going to really care about my position.
That's not true. I think I've been kind of back and forth on this whole thing. I'm trying to hear both sides. You have Mr. Norton, but yes.
Yes, Jenny.
So, Jim, what do you think? What, Aunt? What do you think, Jim?
I was, I kind of had mixed feelings about it. Like, I didn't think he deserved murder, too. But I wasn't comfortable with him being totally exonerated either. I felt that he pushed this.
I feel.
But I know that I said that. Legally, I don't think I don't think the prosecution. I understand that. And I don't think the prosecution dropped the ball. I don't think the prosecution missed something. I think the defense did a brilliant job.
Well, they hid the ball. They hid evidence. They hid reports in the phone logs. They hid the picture of George that they had that proved how he was attacked.
Right,
they
the
never
bloody picture.
asked, not even in his bond hearing, to see his medical records. This is a person making statements to police. My nose was broken. My doctor will confirm it. And a prosecutor doesn't even bother.
Robert, I will say, Robert.
Yeah. Well, are they going to hold on? I'm sorry, Jenny. Are they going to pursue sanctions? They talked about sanctions. Are they going to go after them?
You know what? Stay tuned.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Jenny,
about
do you
that.
have a question for Robert?
No, I just was going to say I think.
What do you mean? It's George's brother. Or like
Yeah.
any type of question. What movie did George watch last night? Now that he's free, anything.
Hey, Jenny, I got to.
Is George heavy-hearted? Robert, is George heavy-hearted?
Is George heavy-hearted? Does that mean he has a good heart?
No, is he heavy-hearted?
Sad. That's a fat joke. That's not nice.
Do you mean sad?
He's going to lose the weight now that the trial is over. Why would you say
Knock
that?
It off. Knock it off. I was
So,
the only
Jenny,
sensitive to those battling the bulge.
What carcass are you guys looking over at HLN now? What carcass are you circling?
Jody Arias has to be sentenced, so there's that
Okay,
carcass.
you got that carcass. That's nice.
Oh, and the
I think we're going to get into the Snyderman trial. She could have lived in my neighborhood.
What's the Snyderman trial?
You don't know, but you'll know in about 15 minutes after HLN.
Yeah,
yes, after
Jewish
HLN.
mother. It's a Jewish mother who's accused of hiring someone to kill her husband.
Well, I can't wait for
Having her
Nancy
boss.
Grace to lube up the lens with that Vaseline and get back on camera.
And out to the lawyers. Unleash the lawyers.
Exactly what I was gonna
Release
say.
the
I wanted
hounds.
to actually say- Guys, I wanted to say one thing to Robert.
Yes.
Robert,
Yes,
I do
sir.
think you are a much better spokesperson for your brother than Frank.
Well, we've
Thank
all
you,
said
Jenny.
that.
Thanks.
Jenny, do you know Nancy
Went out
Grace?
on a limb on that one.
It's
don't know. I
good
don't.
cop, lunatic cop they're playing.
Do you think Nancy Grace does a good job?
I worked in the same ADA's office as Nancy Grace. I've got a lot of stories about her.
Oh boy!
Do any of them involve her wearing football helmet hair wigs? Because she is revolting. She looks like John Lithgow. I really hate her guts.
All right, I'm going to bow out.
All right.
She's got to protect. She's got to protect that TV career.
All right, Jenny.
Nice gig.
Take care.
Nice gig.
Take it easy, Jenny.
All right. Jenny Hutt, everyone. We sort of love you. You know
Not
that. All right,
not
bye-bye.
pounding on Jenny, but it is a prime example of things that do happen in
Well,
that
I didn't really
type
look
of media.
into that.
I didn't look into that.
No kidding, man.
But what you're commenting on is based on that. So she should look into the fact that the trial should never have taken place. He never should have been arrested. The reason he was arrested, like you said, why would these people jeopardize their jobs, everything? There's this giant conspiracy based on racism to not arrest him. All they needed was one piece of evidence.
Anything,
and they could have arrested him. They just didn't find it. And then they had to, everybody gets all outraged. They get this special prosecutor, and it turns into a circus.
Right. Yeah.
And they fired the chief of police for that because, and he can't get his job back now because there was a trial. They said there was a basis for an arrest. And
again, it's like the Stephen Pagonis thing with Tawana Brawley.
Right.
It's a life ruined, but by collateral damage of false allegations.
Yeah, but thank God there are men and women, there are men like him and men and women who actually honor their oath. Unfortunately, it didn't work out so well for Chief Lee. But he was getting really pressured, and he was getting really encouraged by other people who take an oath to stand his ground and face the fire and not buckle to pressure, because politics is supposed to stop where your oath begins.
Right.
And he's a prime example of that. But yeah, I mean, any cop that had any probable cause at any time could have said, "Here it is, Chief. We've got that," and that's enough probable cause, just for an arrest. It's much easier to just chant, "We want an arrest," than to have to think about something.
Yeah.
That's really easy to do.
has anybody in your family, I know in court they separated, had any interaction with the Martin family at all, just incidental or?
There was a friend of George's who claimed on the stand that Mr. Martin had said under his breath, coming and going, had called him, I think he said motherfucker. I think that's what he told him when he saw him at the doors, because he saw that the name tag said family Zimmerman.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if you remember that, but that was kind of, that was right at the beginning when they were doing the rule of sequestration.
Right.
But no, we haven't had any courtroom interaction with them. I have had very limited interaction with, Mr. Parks or seeing Mr. Crump or Natalie Jackson, something like that.
What would you say to Trayvon's mom?
I said it. I said it in September of 2012. I wrote out, with my family's help, a condolence statement. And, you know, I was clear then, and I'm clear now, that it doesn't matter the circumstances surrounding loss of life. Nobody is affected as much by Trayvon's death and his mother or his father. I mean, that goes without saying, I think.
Of course, yeah.
You know, and nobody should have to bury a child under any circumstances. You know, I would now, they don't have to take advice from me. They probably don't even want to hear advice from me, but I would just be real careful who might be exploiting your grief now for their own, you know, gain.
That
you know,
will happen.
Yeah. And what is the time frame starting for George to with a civil trial with the Justice Department? What is the, like? Do they have to do it within 6 months, or is there do they have forever to do it?
We're talking about the investigation. That investigation was opened way a long time ago through the FBI into looking if there was any kind of racism involved or whatever, and it went kind of, you know, simultaneously. And sometimes they open federal investigations and don't resolve them on purpose, so that the right thing doesn't happen, you know, in the state. Then they go, oh, wait a minute, you know, we still have this. My understanding of that, you know, hate crime statute that they're trying to promote is that I mean, it's very specific. There has to be a very specific protected, like gender or sex or, sex or race.
And you need to be acting under color of title, meaning you need to be a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, that's why the police out in LA were. That's one aspect, right?
Yeah, if you're not.
The other one is based on total racism. I mean, you have to be, you know, KKK or, you know, just something just outlandish. And, I mean, there's no evidence of that here.
Right, right.
Yeah, so that's, you know, I don't know. I guess it'll have to run its course and then be closed whenever.
When is he, like, will he eventually go out and do press or I'm sure he wants to talk. It's got to be very frustrating because I would really, you know, as much as I've had feelings about the case, sometimes if you talk to somebody and you can ask specific questions, I know he gave his statements, but it's like, you know, you get to talk to somebody and ask him questions, it makes you see things a little bit
does he plan on
differently, but
doing an interview?
For legal reasons, he probably can't.
Yeah, he hasn't expressed that he does, and we don't try to get him to. Like, we don't go and you know, pitch this person or that person or Nancy Grace or whoever.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. No,
he should agree to do Nancy Grace, then just not show up, because it would annoy her so much.
It would really annoy her.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that he will recover first and then worry about anything out here in this kind of periphery of the public realm. But he has a lot of work to do himself. Anybody would in that situation.
Yeah.
So when you guys are in hiding, like, how do you pay your bills?
I had a lot of money saved, and that's how I paid my
everyone's
bills.
trying to find you guys, but, you know, you're still going to pay your bills.
Right, yeah.
How does all that work? I'm fascinated by
You do everything online. And if you ever need to go in hiding, I'd be a great consultant to make you manage.
Maybe that's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
I just find it amazing that no one was able to find any family member where they were hiding. I just find that really amazing in this day and age.
Good.
Yeah, it's a lot.
No, I don't.
I know.
I don't want them to find your family. I'm just amazed that it just never happened.
It is so easy to track people this day with you know, computer. It is very impressive that you aren't, like, you know,
extremely impressive. Are you just living out of a suitcase?
No. We have, you know, a home. When I'm here, I'm living out of a suitcase.
Right.
But we always have, like, a bag, a take and evacuate bag, just in case.
The go bag.
Yeah, exactly. We have that ready.
Jesse Ventura, he's off the grid.
I'm going to Mexico.
You know what George is going to have to deal with for the rest of his life? Not even just the threat of death or bodily harm. It's just remarks and comments and people saying things. No matter, like, any restaurant you're ever in, someone yelling at you.
Right.
Just the stuff that it just makes life very, very unpleasant.
Yeah, and it's not always the bad stuff. It could be, you know, I hear a lot of good stuff about George all the time. And I was actually with George's wife one time.
He's married?
Yeah.
That's how much I know. I didn't even know he was married.
Yeah, she was in the court.
Yeah, and I was with his wife, and I'm not worried about if people engage me or ask me, are you that guy or whatever? And I said, I don't know what guy, I don't have a TV, and just kind of see what they know. But I was with his wife, and we ran into a person who was a very actually former roommate of George's.
Oh, wow.
And you know, he starts like kind of shouting like, "Oh my God, I can't believe what they did to George! You know, tell George I love him and this and that." So it's not like everyone will be bad, but you might be with a friend, and there's foes around, you know, and then they blow your cover. So that he's going to have to deal with too.
Shut up.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, just fucking wink and give me the okay sign.
Yeah. High sign. Okie dokie.
So what do you do after this? What is the rest of your day and the rest of your weekend like?
Tonight I'll be doing Greta Van Susteren, and tomorrow I'll be in America's Newsroom with Bill Hemmer. And then I will
America's Newsroom. That sounds impressive.
America's Newsroom.
America's Newsroom.
With Bill Hemmer.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I've met Bill and went on his program before, and I look forward to doing it again, and then just kind of bowing out for. There's really not much more you can say about the acquittal. I certainly don't want to give the impression that we're gloating or celebrating. I think it's important to contextualize what happened, and to start to make sense out of it. But I need to be with my family, and I need to get my ducks in a row in terms of employment, things like that.
Yeah. Do you think this will hurt what you were doing professionally before? I mean,
I don't see how you could. The thing about music is, you know, what makes the artist is the art. That's what we all want to believe. But I think that people will hear, if I write an essay and it's authored by me, they're already going to come with an opinion, you know, when they read it. So if I sing a song, you know, and it's sung by me, I'm George Zimmerman's brother doing it, you know, and that's how it would be evaluated. So that kind of sucks when you have to be so focused on music to just have it not really appreciated because it's looked through that perspective.
Yeah. I got a couple tweets here. Tina Vane, also known as Tina Cracker Vane, she writes, Robert, whatever you do, done be politically correct state interracial crime stats.
What?
That's exactly how she tweeted that.
Twitter is an amazing thing, isn't it?
Robert, whatever you do done, be politically correct state interracial crime stats. Right? And then we got this one from Robicio. This conversation is a little one-sided. He still killed a teenager that would have done nothing if not followed.
Well, I think 6 people said he did kill a teenager, but they said he's not, he was justified in doing such.
Yeah.
And then someone said that that neighborhood has, more crime than Compton. Like someone actually broke down the crime stats.
Yeah, I wish somebody really would. I mean, I can't.
I'm trying to find it. I don't know if this is true, but Steroid Opie on Twitter writes, Compton, California, 29 robberies per 1,000. Sanford, Florida, 60 robberies per 1,000.
Oh, Sanford is bad. I'm just talking about like that neighborhood. I can't imagine. I mean, 400 phone calls in 12 months for 200 homes is like you yourself called the police twice in a year.
Yeah, no matter who's in there.
I called the police like twice growing up.
Yeah.
In like 18 years.
Right.
And I just can't even imagine in that density. It's not like a sprawling area.
Yeah, it's very small, actually. You look at the map of it.
Have you had to block anyone on Twitter?
You like Spike Lee or something like that?
Oh, my God.
I've had to block some people.
Would you like to just, would you like to talk to certain, celebrities that have been, overtly, he's a murderer and he should be killed? Would you like to discuss this with these people, or would they be unwilling to talk this out with you?
I don't think so. I've always been willing to take calls or on radio or take any question on television, and I know that those kind of people are listening. But celebrities, they're performers, and performance is based on arousing emotion. They're not attorneys who inform a fact. So they don't want to think a lot sometimes, and they just want. They like to be popular, and it's really popular to chant things like hope and change and arrest. It's easy, and that's what they do. They're performers and they're performing.
Yeah. Now we got Judge Alex on the line. Should we take a break? What should we do? We've been at it for 2 hours here.
Actually,
let me see if he could
grab Judge Alex.
What?
Should we grab Judge Alex?
I would like to have him on the same time.
Yeah. You want to just continue?
Yeah, let's go. Why not?
Judge Alex, welcome to the Opie and Anthony Show.
Hey, guys.
How you doing,
How
man?
was it? I got to ask a question from over the weekend. How was it drinking with Anthony Cumia?
Well, the good part was drinking. That was...
That's the best part.
He says you're a responsible drinker, though.
Of course.
No, I am. Actually, I am. I have a 2-drink rule. I cut myself off after 2 drinks.
Yeah. I can only imagine what happens if you take that third. That means there's been problems in the past where you're like, okay, I gotta stick to 2.
He was.
No, you know what it is. If you guys get it, well, not you guys. You guys would be in the same boat I'm in. But if everybody out there, they get a DUI, their family's embarrassed. If you and I get a DUI, we're in every paper.
Yeah, exactly.
And never mind the fact that you could actually kill somebody. I mean, that's really the overriding thing. But when you're in the spotlight, your behavior is really watched, and you just have to be careful.
Yeah. Well, Judge Alex.
That being said, being with Anthony required me to drink heavily.
Yeah, indeed. We have Robert Zimmerman here with us. And what's your take on the verdict? Just a little.
I think it's as I said. I think when I was with you guys, I said the same thing. I think that it's the only lawful verdict the jury could have brought back. It's a tragic case. There's no question about it. And I was listening to the story about the tweets that the Martins have put out, asking for calm and talking about how their heart's broken and all that. And I have to say, number one, so emotional to hear them expressing their feelings that way. And on top of that, I don't know that if I were in the same situation, I could have the strength and the class that they have shown in the tragedy throughout. And that being said, the justice system requires certain things. It requires a certain level of evidence that the prosecution simply didn't have. They don't have it. They cannot rebut George Zimmerman's claim of self-defense beyond every reasonable doubt. In fact, there was substantial evidence of self-defense there.
Yeah.
And yes, I think we all would agree. We wish George had never left the car. We wish he had not been in any contact with Trayvon Martin. We wish all of that. And this would never have happened. But since that did happen, the prosecutors have to look at the evidence. They have to make a decision. They do it every day. The cases like this, unfortunately, are not rare.
Right.
There are many cases where a person is killed and the only witness is the person who killed them, and there is no video camera, and there are no neighbors who saw anything, and the forensic evidence is not conclusive as to one version or the other. And in those cases, the state attorney has a very difficult conversation with the family of the victims and says, we're sorry. We are deeply sorry. We would love to have evidence to prosecute in this case, but we don't. And we are obligated by our ethical obligation not to bring a case that we cannot prove beyond every reasonable doubt. They have this conversation every day across this country with victims. In this case, they clearly knew they did not have enough evidence to reach beyond a reasonable doubt.
Judge Alex, good morning. I was wondering about your perspective if you saw the press conference where Ms. Corey announced that her role or her mission as a prosecutor and what your thoughts were to seek justice specifically for Trayvon, and that her first order of business was to pray with, quote, those sweet, sweet parents. Is it appropriate for a governor to send a prayer leader is that a part of any prosecutor's oath that you're supposed to pray with people who you assume you are seeking justice for, or are prosecutors supposed to seek justice for society generally?
They're supposed to seek justice for society generally, and when we saw that on television, I was a little surprised. There is no problem with the state attorney feeling sympathy for the family of the victim and expressing that. The problem, I think, is if you take a look at the entire circumstance of this case. When it happened, when the shooting happened, the first thing was, I wonder if this is racism. I wonder if this was race motivated. I have no problem with that. I think that if you have an older man who shoots a young boy, and the older man's white and the young boy's black, it would be ridiculous for people to not say, I wonder if racism is involved here. This is just outrageous the way it looks. However, because to ignore that, obviously, is to ignore that racism does exist. So, however, once you're investigating and the investigation reveals that this is not race motivated, and I think the investigation clearly revealed that. In fact, the FBI launched its own investigation because of the public outcry and interviewed witnesses and interviewed people who knew George and all this stuff. And they issued a report saying there is no evidence of racism here. The state attorneys in court made that statement. Now, while they were making that statement, on the one hand, I think with the left hand, they were trying to imply racism. And it was very apparent to me, and I think it was very apparent to a lot of people who work in the legal field and were watching this. So the media took that initial impression of racism and it appears to be ran with it like a train.
Did the media act with incompetence because of that? Should there be some kind of standard? I mean, these people, Mr. Crump and Ms. Jackson, they had a financial interest in the outcome of how this case or my brother would be perceived, and they had a script and they sold it. Is that competent journalism to take the word for people as soon as they drop racism on the table, who want you to believe that it's racism as fact and then to report it as fact?
Well, I don't really have much faith in the media anymore. I mean, I lost my faith in the media many years ago. So I take things I hear in the media with a grain of salt. I am not one of those who subscribes to one TV station or one network and says everybody else is whatever, because I just feel like the media in today's day and age twists too many facts for their own benefit. And so I'll watch several different networks, and I don't necessarily believe all that one of them says or anything that one of them says. I just watch it to get the different perspectives. And what I think they did was they had a viewpoint that they wanted to sell to the public. And we are becoming, with the media, more and more every day, their puppets. And they play what they want to play. They air what they want to air. And there was one major network that actually edited the call from George, where he said, I'm watching somebody who's suspicious. We had a lot of break-ins in the area, and they asked him what's suspicious about him. And he said, he's walking in the dark, in the rain, between houses at night. It looks like he's checking them out. And they said, is he black, white, or Hispanic? And he said, well, he's black. And they cut all that out, and they aired it. This is a national, this is a major network, and they aired it to say, hi, I'm watching the suspicious guy in my neighborhood, and we had a lot of burglaries. Oh, what's suspicious about him? He's black.
He's black.
He's wearing a hoodie.
So,
Yeah.
I want to tag that, too. Hold on, Judge Alex. I want to tag that because it goes to your point. And then they get caught doing that, and the apology is kind of on the back pages, so most people don't even realize that, that was done.
And that's what bothers me, too, is that not only was the apology in the back page, the apology, number two, made no sense. The apology was, we had something to the effect of, well, that was an intern. Like a major network would let an intern edit a tape and then put it on the air with nobody checking it. And then on top of that, it wasn't carried. I mean, you'd think that the other networks would say, oh, my God, I can't believe this major network
of course
falsified a tape. When I mention that, people look at me and go, are you serious? And I'm thinking, how could you not have heard that? So there was this script of racism, even though the investigation revealed that this was not race-based. I mean, it was race-based to an extent. Let me say that, okay? Because if you have a lot of burglaries in an area, and the burglaries are committed by young black males, teenage black males, and you see a young teenage black male coming between houses in the night, in the rain, and he looks out of place, you don't recognize him. That is a factor in the description. That is not racism. Racism is you see a black male and you go, oh, I better watch him, he must be up to no good. But if he fits a description of people who are committing crimes in the area, it is a factor to take into account. If it would have been burglaries committed by Hispanic males, and there's a Hispanic male coming between the houses, it is a factor in the description. Just like if it was burglaries committed by guys with long brown hair, That is a factor. Now, the suspicion that maybe this was well, he doesn't like black males and he's racially profiling. That's a fair concern, but that concern was completely disproved to the local police and to the FBI. Yet, I think even throughout the trial, the state attorney's office, and even at the end in her speech, which I found a little disturbing in Angela Corey's speech. At the end. It was still more of the same, and I think that there probably needs to be an investigation into how and why this case was pursued beyond the point when they clearly knew they could not prove the case.
And when they had a grand jury impaneled and they were, able to avail themselves of the grand jury and just kind of sidestep that. Yeah. That was bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for your audience's benefit, the reason that's important, Robert makes a good point there. I don't think I've actually ever met Robert, but I've seen him on some interviews, and he makes a good point there. If you give the investigation to the grand jury and they come back with an indictment or an information, well, okay, fine. You presented it and they made the decision. You go forward. So state attorneys do this all the time. some people suggest maybe she didn't do that because she was given the marching orders to prosecute this case so that we don't have any rioting and so we don't have any civil unrest. And if she gave it to the grand jury, they might not indict. They probably wouldn't have come back with a true bill. And so she wouldn't be able to prosecute it. So the argument there that's being made is she purposely sidestepped the grand jury so she could proceed with the prosecution that she was told to make.
Yeah.
And the bad part about that is that if that was the motivation, and, I am very suspicious by nature when something like this happens, if that is the motivation, then they went forward and avoided civil unrest because there was a high risk of it back then. You'll remember with Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys
there were
are good.
some civil unrest going on.
Yep.
So they avoided civil unrest in the state of Florida by charging somebody that they knew they could not prove the crime against. And now, at the end of the day, they don't really get much civil unrest because, first of all, time has passed. Secondly, the evidence was put out there, and it's them getting up there and saying, "Look, we have this evidence. It is not enough for these reasons." They put on the trial and let everybody see that they had a weak case, and let the jury come back with a not guilty, and then they stand up there and said, "Well, we tried." And the downside to that is you sacrificed George Zimmerman for your own. For your own gain, to avoid civil unrest and all that, you now have marked him because you have basically put the official stamp of the state attorney on it saying this is a legitimate prosecution, and that's going to result in some lawsuits. They're going to be sued as well as.
Wait, does that hurt George?
As attorneys, you have an ethical obligation not to do that. Judge Alex, do you think that the Florida State Bar should investigate Angela Curry and the other prosecutors?
I think that they probably will have some complaints, and if they have complaints, they will have to investigate. I think the bigger investigation really needs to be, and I hate to say this, by the way, because I am a huge fan of state attorneys and public defenders. I think that state attorneys, public defenders, police officers, teachers give more to our community than by far, than they are compensated for. But, when I see something like this, there were those allegations of withholding of evidence and material that should have been turned over to the defense. It appeared from the allegations, and I guess we'll have to wait and see if they're true, there was that they were intentionally done. There was an employee, a whistleblower from the state attorney's office, who basically, according to him, caught them hiding evidence from the defense. And
they threw his ass out of there, too.
Do you think, though, it's, like you said for George Zimmerman, does it in a way work out to his advantage that all this has gotten out there, though? Like, if they didn't prosecute, even though maybe they shouldn't have, if they didn't, it looks like this whole big cover-up thing, and people were still talking about him. At least it looks like it's gone through the process, and he was legally acquitted. Does this work out better for him in the long run, just as a man?
Well, I can't, honestly, I can't say it works out better for him because, first of all, there's a difference between the state attorney getting up there and saying, "Look, I'm sorry, we don't have enough evidence. The evidence that we have is insufficient to prosecute." He's claiming self-defense. The evidence tends to support self-defense. We know that there may be evidence that disputes it in some respect, but there really isn't enough evidence to prosecute. There would have been anger, and then it would have gone away. Now what you had was a trial that every day was raising people's expectations. People are thinking, well, the prosecutor took it. It must be a good case.
It legitimized something that was illegitimate.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that kind of
conviction.
Right. And going off of Jim's question, do you think the public would have been better served by having a consistent message from an appointed official like that kind of reinforced that all of the people in the police department were acting ethically, the state attorney's office was acting ethically, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement was acting ethically? Or do you think now, because these expectations were raised, that the next George Zimmerman or whatever that happens in Sanford, the public was not as well served by this entire process? Where is the public trust now?
I don't know. I don't know if the public is going to distrust the state attorney's office in Sanford because this was not the state attorney's office in Sanford. I mean, you'll remember that the police and the state attorneys looked at this, and the suggestion was, oh, they're whitewashing this. They didn't do any investigation. They basically don't want to prosecute him because he's a white Hispanic male. I keep getting corrected. I keep saying he's white, and Trayvon is a black male and all this. Well, what we're seeing now from the evidence is apparently they did a thorough investigation. Apparently they did consider it thoroughly, and they decided they did not have enough. It looks like they did exactly what prosecutors are ethically required to do, and then all of a sudden, whoever made the decision, I have no idea who it is, somebody made the decision, let's send down this other prosecutor and let them go at it and take this to trial, and that is where I have an issue.
And in essence overruled, so it kind of legitimized what Mr. Crump was alleging, that the public should not trust these agencies because they were conspiring for racist reasons to sweep the murder of a black child under the rug, as he put it to Piers Morgan. Didn't it legitimize, didn't the public trust suffer because this politician came to overrule in what we know were ethical leaders honoring their oath?
Well, I think the trust. I think they cast aspersions on the state attorney and the police officers in Sanford County, and I think that reasonable people who watched the trial realize that was a shell game. That this state attorneys in Sanford and Seminole County, and that the police officers who investigated this, they did what they could. They did what they could. They investigated it. They tried to shake George. They did that interrogation where they said, hey, you know what? We think we might have a video of this. Trayvon could have been filming it, or there are a lot of neighbors there, and he didn't shake. When I listened to all the evidence, I said they had no case. They had no case from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have to like the outcome. It doesn't mean I think reasonable people out there, because there are a lot of unreasonable people. There are some people who will never ever see racism. There are some people out there who are like, oh my God, every time somebody claims racism, I'm beside myself. And there are some people on the other side who always see racism. And I tend to understand more the people who always see racism, because if you were living in a community where you are a minority, and let's say, serial killers tend to be predominantly white males, or sexual molesters, middle-aged white males predominantly, okay? And if there was a sexual molester going around and you were constantly being viewed that way, when you walked around, people would look at you like kind of, I wonder if this guy's a sexual molester. That would really, really get you. Now imagine it was happening not just because there was a sexual molester running around. Imagine it was happening your whole life. From the time you were born, people were looking at you that way. So I understand the people who tend to feel like racism is everywhere, but I think that they've got to realize it's not. It's not everywhere, and if you claim it's everywhere, then the times when it really, really is racism, people will tend to be desensitized and will not believe you. And on the other side, there are the extremists on the other side who believe it's never racism. But most of America, I believe, is in the middle and recognizes that some people have racist tendencies and act on them, and some people don't. And they listen fairly to the case, and they make up their own minds. The big issue I have is when some powerful entity like the media or like a state attorney takes it and tries to snow the public and tries to make them believe their agenda or their version of it. And that's unfortunately what I think happened to some extent in this case. Tragic as the case was, regardless, it was not a case of racism. And
no, I don't think they're going to be able to get with that civil rights investigation. I don't think that's going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
either.
and I don't think we can afford to cry wolf with racism.
Right, yes.
We're debasing the whole argument for when it actually is there, which it is abhorrent, but crying wolf
the word is becoming nothing, because it's just being used for every little a disagreement on a black-white issue. The word racism comes out when you're just trying to have a civil dialogue about something.
Yeah, and Judge Alex
look at it in this case. I tweeted on both sides here. I tweeted about things that, there are things in George's story that I don't believe.
Like what, Judge Alex?
Yes.
An example.
Okay. With respect to George getting out of the car to go look at a street sign. I don't believe that. I think George got out of the car to see where Trayvon went because he thought Trayvon was up to no good. And maybe he felt that, oh, you know what, maybe this dispatcher told me he doesn't need me to follow him, and then I was still looking to see where he went, and maybe I'm getting in trouble for that. And I think, and this is just my opinion, I may be completely wrong, but I'm telling you based on the evidence I saw and everything, I think that he made up I went to look at the street sign because he wanted to not say I was looking to see where he was. And by the way, I think the evidence also clearly supports in my mind that Trayvon is the one who approached George. And people will disagree with me on that, but I think that Gene Tell's testimony established that pretty clearly in my mind. But that being said, that's just my opinion. But I think, and it doesn't make his act illegal. I mean, if I see somebody coming out of my neighbor's house, I'm going to call the police and say, hey, my neighbor's not home, and I see this guy, and I think he might be up to no good. Well, he might not be up to no good, but I think that. I may follow him. They may tell me don't follow him. I may still follow him.
Yeah.
They're telling me that because they don't want me to get hurt. But I'm not violating the law. I could walk up to him and say, what are you doing here? I'm not violating the law. But for whatever reason, maybe he didn't know that he could legally do that, and he, I think, made up the story. Well, when I tweet that, I get responses from people like, oh, you're part of the train that wants to railroad George, and you're part of it. And if I tweet something that I think, like, for example, our conversation now, that I think that legally this prosecution should not have been brought because they have an ethical obligation not to bring a case they can't prove, I will get tweets from people on the other side who said, you're such a racist. So you can't win. If you're trying to be fair, you can't win because one side and the other side will disagree with you. If you just pick a side and say, I'm going to run with it, and you just shut out the other side and say, George is being railroaded, then at least you've got those people who are going to side with you. Well, I mean, that's not the way I do things. I call them as I see them.
Yep. All right. Well, Judge Alex, thanks for the call.
Thank you very much.
Very informative, of course, as usual.
Were you amazed how much Anthony could drink? I need to know.
Yeah. I was.
I need to know, Judge Alex.
I was having a little wine, and I wasn't drinking very fast.
Did it strike you as odd he had one straw in yours as well as his own? He was siphoning it.
Did you have to hold your drink with two hands because you felt like he was going to grab it at any moment and chug it down?
Smart asses.
Yeah, that'll teach you to go drink with me again.
Yeah, great.
All right, Judge Alex.
Thank you, Judge Alex.
Good talking to you guys.
Yeah, right on.
There he goes.
And Robert, one more tweet. Just trying to keep it fair.
I wonder if protocols are going to change, like 911 protocols.
Yeah, right.
And saying like which way did he go, and then you hear the door chime and the door open.
Now it's like
which way did he go, but without following.
Without following him, tell me where he went.
Interesting tweet from this guy, Steve.
Yes.
Whatever. His name is too fucked up.
Steve-O.
He writes, brother just got off on murder charges, and he's on a media tour, huh? ? Disgraceful is the hashtag. You wanna address that?
It is what it is. I don't.
I think you're out there sticking up for your brother.
I think
that's how I see it.
Yeah, and if my whole
your brother
family
can't really talk right now. Sorry.
No, you're right, and neither my mom and dad are not doing that right now. They will speak out eventually and contextualize what it has meant for our family, how we disappeared from the face of the earth, and what this. There are no winners, but it is a legal victory in the sense that George was exonerated, what that means for us. And, if they don't disagree, I don't know if that guy's a brother.
And to be honest, Robert was out talking before the trial, too.
Yeah,
it wasn't like, oh, wow, an acquittal, let me get out there and start. You've been a strong advocate for your brother.
Way before.
How could anybody not see that?
I read the tweet because I know people are thinking that.
Oh.
So I just wanted you to have a chance to address that.
Yeah, a guy going out and kind of fighting the media machine, or I hate to say it like that, but there really is. There's nothing wrong with that because they really do have one kind of collective voice, and you have to go out and give your point and give it loudly and often.
Do you at some point just go into a closed room and scream at the top of your lungs? Because you're very mild-mannered on the shows, and there's got to be a point where you're just like, God, I'd like to scream at you.
No,
Not you, Jimmy.
Oh.
No, I those like sometimes when I leave certain shows, I do think I just think I don't know. You kind of have to put everything aside to just deal with that, and you have to remember. I mean, you guys are very chill, but some of these people have these outlandish egos, and they think that they are,
Oh, Jimmy.
They just came right down the top Olympus.
I ooze humility. I actually was voted boy most likely to say something humble in high school.
Oh, wow.
Well, why don't we, I guess, wrap up? God, man, it's just great to have you on here. You give a great perspective from being so close to the family. You've been a pleasure to watch on television, too. Very concise, very articulate. I like that you put things in perspective, and obviously, look, you're closer to that side of the story, but you're very educated as to what this whole thing has been about. So you know, if I watch somebody else from the prosecution side or from Trayvon's family, it's going to be different. But you've done just such a great job of defending your brother, and that's so very noble.
And was George able to see Grown Ups 2 over the weekend, or?
I have no idea.
Did you see Sharknado?
No, I didn't.
You guys didn't get to see Sharknado?
Nothing, no.
There is an injustice.
I think that is the injustice.
Worst movie you'll ever see on Sci-Fi Channel. Catch it.
Oh, but everyone watched.
Everyone tweeted about it. I don't think people really
we had a little
watched it.
something to do with that.
About 1.7 million watched it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Which is good for sci-fi.
That's huge for sci-fi. Okay,
Yeah.
so not everyone was watching, but that's still a big number for them.
All right, let's eat. Again, thanks.
Thank you for having me.
And
your helicopter's waiting for you on the roof.
Excellent.
And
good luck to you.
We'll be back after an hour
By the
break.
way, I want to ask Robert one thing. When you saw Roland Campos, did you go, George?
Oh, God.
You know Roland?
No, I didn't see him today.
Oh,
I kind of snuck in.
Yeah. And I want to thank Bob Dylan for being on the phone for the last 2.5 hours.
Yes, excellent job, Chris.
Thank you, Bob
Chris.
Dylan.
Well, can I get a plug in?
Sure.
Yeah.
My law firm's website is cjplaw.com, and my Twitter is ATL Esquire 1973.
All right. You got one thing to say before you hang up. Do you know what it is? Don't disappoint me. Don't disappoint.